Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another stream with Swaggle Haas. And in this stream, we got to ask the question, who even buys comic books? Who even buys comic books anymore? Does anybody buy comic books in the comic book collecting hobby? Well, apparently some people do because they got a comic book connect auction going on right now. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to just, turn on the stream, hang out with you guys, maybe get some special guests on. I invited some people. We'll see if anyone shows up. We'll see if anyone shows up in the chat. And I thought it would be just kind of a fun thing to do to kind of go over some of the auctions, take a look at some of the big books that are moving out there, answer some questions if anyone shows up in the stream, and just, talk some comic books. This is a little bit impromptu, a little bit, Friday afternoon. Felt like kind of firing up the stream just because I was watching the auction, had some time. I thought, hey, this would be, appropriate because I feel like last time there was a heritage auction and I did some live commentary and people were like, oh, that was kind of fun to do that. So I figured we could do something similar here as well. I guess we can do some little housekeeping stuff. Let's see. What kind of housekeeping stuff do I have to do here? Nothing specific. Nothing specific. Just I hope you guys are having a wonderful end to the week. Here we are on Friday. And let me check in with the chat here. We got Dan. Dan's X-Men Comics. What's going on, Dan? It's good to see you. Superman, right? No soup. Not soup. Yeah, Superman. I changed the thumbnail on you. We were talking about soups going to the moon. I think the big book of the night for sure is definitely going to be the Superman #1 in a CGC 4.5. That's definitely, the marquee book of the night. So we'll see. I tried to time it out so that we will definitely be on stream while that auction ends. I'm very curious to see what it'll go for. I think that'll be one of the bigger sticker prices that we get tonight for sure. Let's see here. Eyewitness, the amazing Swaggle. Eyewitness, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. We got Christian Garza in the chat here with the swagger. We got Dude J Ryan in the chat as well. Good to see you guys. We got Tishu. I think that was in reference to who buys comic books. Well, Tishu, you and me both, buddy. You and me both. We got comic books. I got some comic books right here I recently bought. I maybe we'll flip through that, and I feel like we'll cover the auction. But maybe if we, I don't know. There's a lot of other stuff I feel like I want to talk about too. There's some other interesting stories that we can go over, but we'll stick it to the auction for now. Don't highlight anything I'm bidding on. Okay, Eggplant Comics. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat that you're bidding. Actually, this would be funny. We should actually do live commentary of comics that you are bidding on. But it's really interesting with Comic Connect. Comic Connect, if you guys don't know, has a kind of a slightly different auction style. Unlike eBay or Heritage or even Comic Link, Comic Connect, you cannot snipe auctions. So if you put in a bid under 3 minutes, 3 minutes will be added back to the clock. So you cannot snipe on Comic Connect. I mean, on the one hand, it's pretty annoying, like as far as like watching things go by, because auctions get bumped back and then other auctions pass it. So it's kind of like not the most, not the best way to watch auctions, but at the same time, like some people like that, right? Like you don't want the pressure of having to hit bid with 1 second left. I mean, even though that's still what people do, like people still hit bid with 1 second left, but the clock resets. So you at least have 3 minutes to decide, okay, I don't want to bid on this, or like, hey, this is my final bid and it is what it is. So you don't have to worry about that last second snipe. Jason Brown here. The future is Superboy and Legion of Superheroes, baby. DC, I got to say, like the DC fervor, I had that video where I was at LA Comic-Con. I was talking to the dealers, and Christian, Elvin's Comic, shout out to Christian. He was talking about how like DC books, everybody wanted DC at the show. Everyone wanted DC. Definitely feels that way. I think at the top of the year, I'm going to I have some videos planned to talk about DC. DC is also revamping a lot of their current comic books. The name of what the story revamp that they're doing totally escapes me at the moment, but they're doing like a whole new thing, like almost to the level of like New 52 style. So I don't know, bright future for DC. We can talk about the Henry Cavill thing. I think that's really interesting. Makes a lot of sense for sure why they're doing that, even though it's kind of a bummer. Michael Baker here. Comic Connect, Comic Link, Heritage. Let's hit them all. All right, we'll hit them all for sure. Swaggle, did you ever get your comic books back from that one dude? I have not gotten my comic books back. It is still work in progress. I will definitely have like a video update. And, when I have a good update, I think I will do something for that. But I don't really have, like, it's I got a PI working on stuff. I got a detective on stuff. I'm still in communication with a bunch of people. So once there's more to share, I will definitely share it. We got Ben in the house. We got Eggplant in here. What big book is on your list to buy if it dips enough? That's a good question. There's definitely a lot of like the Marvel, super keys like Tales of Suspense 39. I'd love to pick up a Tales of Suspense 39. And I probably will get one eventually, especially if the prices continue to go down. I mean, it's already in like striking distance to where I feel like it's comfortable for me to spend on it. Although if it does go down a little bit more, I would definitely pull the trigger on that. What other books? I mean, at some point, I need to add a 181 to my collection, but I feel like with 181, you have a lot of time. So a lot of those kind of Marvel keys, as they kind of come back in line, I'll definitely have my eyes on for sure. What about you? What kind of books are you guys looking to get in this market? I mean, if comic books go to zero, maybe I'll get an AF-15 next year. I don't know. What do you think of Do You Pooh? What do you think of Do You Pooh? What is Do You Pooh? Like Winnie the Pooh? Is that the spelling? I don't. I need clarification on that Pooh comment. We got Neo Cards and Comics in the house. Neo, if you want to come in here, get in this stream, let me get your takes on the market here. I mean, you should definitely hop in. Hold on a second. Let me just slide into Neo's DMs over here. If he wants to come into the chat. Should have prepared this, ladies and gentlemen, earlier, but it is what it is. This is the impromptu style. All right, let's hop on over to Comic Connect here, guys. I got this window pulled up. I think some auctions have passed for sure. So let me kind of catch up, and we can kind of talk about this. There were some big books that I kind of wanted to time right when I started the stream. I thought they would end, but they kind of got bumped back here. And what did I want to do with this one? Okay, let's talk about some of this one. This is the first one that ended here tonight that I thought was a really cool kind of book to keep our eyes on. This is Sensation Comics #1. And what this book is, if you guys know, this is definitely the second appearance of Wonder Woman. This is kind of like the first stories with her in it. And if I understand it correctly, it's definitely her first cover appearance, although that is not notated on the label. But this is a really cool book and definitely got a pretty good sale. I mean, 165 for this 8.5. I have it pulled up right here. And let me see what the 8.5 just went for. 8.5 went for 132 in 2019. So a steady increase, $25,000 or so from the last sale. So a good showing for that book, which is kind of interesting because some of the other auctions that had been going up recently, like the All-Star Comics with her first appearance, those ones of a lot of Golden Age books were actually having corrections, which I thought was pretty interesting. Like, for the most part, Golden Age is always going to be safe to go up in value from sale to sale, even in this market we're in. But there are certain Golden Age books that have had pullbacks, like All-Star Comics, her first appearance. But this one right here seems like it's doing pretty strong in the market. There was also the Detective Comics first appearance of Robin that has had pretty big corrections and stuff. But ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest joining the stream, the one, the only, Rob from Neo's Cards and Comics. Rob, what's going on, man? Good to see you.
What's up, buddy? I got a little bit of time. I have my own live stream scheduled at 8 p.m. So a little pre-game over here for a little bit.
We're doing the early show, the lead-in, the hype stream for Neo's stream later tonight. If you guys don't know Neo, he has a great YouTube channel. I have his link in the description. So definitely hop over to his stream later tonight after this one. What do you think, Rob? Is everything going to zero? Does anyone buy comic books anymore? What's the deal here?
No one buys anything anymore. We just buy like peanut butter and bread, and that's it.
Yeah, this is it. Just necessities. You can't eat comics. You can't sleep in comics. So
you can burn them to keep you warm.
That is true. So all you need is comics and Tinder and a match. You'll be all right.
I know we talk about because I really like your index stuff and bumping against the trend line and stuff. I do think maybe we dip a little bit below the trend lines after the first of the year. We talked about it.
Yeah, I think so too.
When you were on was like a week or two ago or something like that. I think a couple weeks ago when you were on my channel and we were chatting for a little while. I worry about just the general economic stuff at the beginning of the year, like that post-Christmas economic downturn, kind of like
Yeah.
meh period. So I am a
Yeah.
little concerned that things could get a little bit cheaper. I don't think we see 40% drops like we have. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
That's
I
what
don't think
I'm
it's going to blow through the trend line, but I definitely see some things. I mean, you're already seeing things now, flirting with it and already dipping below on some of the stuff that's like really been hammered. You know, like
totally.
Shang-Chi and stuff, and
Yeah, totally.
like that stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I agree with you. I definitely think that we will definitely test like some lower levels for sure. My question, I wonder if it's like, are comic books, is it priced in already? It's probably not, actually. Everything probably, comics probably a little bit slower, kind of like real estate, whereas like stocks might have that priced in fear or that priced in euphoria, depending on which way it's going. Whereas like comics might delay a little
I
bit.
think it's a slower. You know, we've talked about this a lot. How like sports cards kind of like lead the way on some of like the general market trends, and then whatever sports cards do in a lot of cases, like comic books seem to follow, like as
Yeah.
to like tangential collectible markets. And I think part of it is because comic books don't transact as frequently as cards do.
Right.
Because I'm saying this in like a very macro level. You know, we've talked about like the population counts on sports cards versus the census counts on comic books being like a fraction of what a sports card pop count could be. So it just
Right.
takes longer for the price to come down if you know, I've been looking at Journey in the Mystery 85, which is I know is one we've both chatted about before. That just doesn't sell very often.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it takes longer for it to downtrend because there might only be, I don't know what, 3 5 O's that sell in a month, maybe. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, some stuff in sports cards will transact 150 times in a week, like
Right.
depending
That's
on what
kind of
it
the
is.
that's kind of what I was saying with, sometimes when you look at like the Bronze Age books that transact at higher rates, or like if you were
Mhm.
looking at like ASM 300, like you're going to get pretty accurate data for that. Whereas like you were saying with Gym 85, it's like specifically how often does the 3.0 sell? I mean, like I'm sure it sells at least, once a month or something like that, but it can skip a couple months or whatever, or it can be like random.
Yeah.
So it's harder to get sort of an accurate feel. And that's kind of why you see like weird things where it's like you might see a 3.5 sell for less than like a 2.5 might sell for more, because like there's just, depending on the day, like who was looking
Well,
at that time.
also too, when you get down into that grade, like presentation could swing something. Like if a 2.5 looks really good, you might be willing to bid a little heavier on it than,
That's true. Yeah,
you
that's
know.
true.
Like
Yeah,
I
there
was
was.
actually just watching one. I was surprised it went this low. A 4.5 sold yesterday on eBay for 26.50, and it was a nice looking 4.5.
Oh yeah, that's a good price. There was definitely, because I have a 3.0, and there was a 3.0 that went on auction. I don't know, maybe it was a couple weeks ago or something, and it had like a really like, like when comics have like those faded covers that are like really messed up, and I was like, this is gonna hurt my 90-day moving right here, like because this
Yeah.
has a aesthetic flaw that is definitely gonna sell for
That's
under.
the problem with the low grade stuff, and then like agreeing to like when you go to resell it, making sure whoever your buyer is like understanding of, well, like, yeah, but you might not even know either. Like if you weren't
Yeah,
following that and you were just like randomly checking sold prices and be like, oh well, this sold super cheap without knowing
right.
like what it actually looked like.
Well, that's one of the reasons too. Like, Go Collect has a lot of problems with like prices and stuff. Like it's not super accurate like GPA. But one of the things I like about Go Collect is if I go here, I can see images of the books that sold. And so like this is one of the reasons why I like to use it for those purposes. But like you're saying, yeah, it's like sometimes people just look at last GPA sold and they're like, well, it went for X, but you don't know that maybe this was like a completely faded cover, or, had,
Yeah.
you
Or
know,
even on the modern stuff, you know, like I've recently talked about X-Men 101 and like a high grade. There's big differences between like some of the 9.4s and 9.6s even because of the way that that book was wrapped. Like a lot of them have a big white line
yeah, that's
on the
true.
left hand side, and like to me, like there's been ones that I've passed on at good prices based off that, and I'm sure that that affects the sale price of that book to some degree. Probably not like 40% or anything crazy like that, but if one went for a few $100s lower, that would be one of the first things I would
Yeah.
look at.
But it's Yeah, yeah, and you're right, but it's also too like, even if it's not like a dollar amount you can put on it, if all of a sudden Rob decides this is not the book I want, that's like one less bidder who, like, maybe it was those two people who were going to bid it up, you know, and
Yeah,
then
maybe
so
there was
like
going to be three of us, and instead there only ended up being two.
exactly right, and so it's like almost not even a dollar amount. It's just like that the aesthetic flaw takes somebody out of the race, and
Yeah,
then that could translate to a very big difference in the price.
for sure.
All right, let's take a look at this. This is an interesting one. Showcase number 4, first appearance of the Flash. This is a $57. Somebody got a really good price on this one.
I was going to say
I
that
don't.
I don't follow the DC stuff super closely at all, but that just feels cheap.
Yeah, well, I mean, so this is a 2019 price right here. I guess the 1.5 doesn't always go on sale. We got a $12,000 sale. Excuse me,
Ouch.
earlier this year. Maybe this is a nicer looking copy. Debatable, but compared to here, the slash price 10.7 maybe went for, I don't know.
Yeah,
Let's call it.
the previous one definitely looked better than that one.
Yeah, yeah, but
But
you know,
still, that's a
definitely
huge.
that's a pretty big drop for this. But you
Actually,
know,
isn't that the
Silver Age
same
book.
one? Is that the same book that was the slashed out price?
Um, yeah, it looks similar, huh? Yeah, could be.
I noticed on the staples. I don't know if you could see the cert number or not.
Let's see, 16169, 16169. Yeah, same book. So someone
That's
took a
cool.
loss here.
Hey man, you
Bought
got to
this in
get it in for the end of
September.
the year for depending on how people do their inventory on their taxes.
Yeah, maybe someone bought this in September, went down here to 57.
So
But
how
a good
quick? When
buy.
was the last time that sold before that?
September for this book.
Wow, that wasn't even that long ago.
No, it wasn't. So somebody like in 3 months, I would say September definitely
Oof.
felt like that was the turn of the tide. I think once you get to October and stuff. But talk about a good entry point into this book. I mean, this is about as cheap as you can get it in the last like couple years. Very
Yeah,
cool.
I don't follow DC stuff much at all. I don't even own a single DC book. But like, if you just randomly said like, "Hey, what do you think like the first appearance of Flash goes for in a low grade?" I would have said way more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Some other interesting ones to talk about this Green Lantern, but I don't know what the price are off the top of my head, but I was curious to see like just if DC was going to have like a big showing just from pure excitement. So like Showcase 22.
Do you
Let's see
think
what
the
that.
Cable stuff sucked some of the wind out of the room on that?
I
I don't
like
know how much
it,
that matters. I mean, I know it was
right,
just
right.
super popular. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I think it does, but at the same time, like, does it actually translate into someone who's spending $44,000 on a
Probably not.
book? Um, so let's see, 44,000 for a 7.5. So that's huge. That's a huge number. Holy crap.
Yeah, but one hasn't sold
Oh,
since.
one hasn't sold. I gotcha. This is the last sale for that was 2020. So pretty strong showing for Green Lantern here.
Has like a 7 or an 8.0 sold recently.
8.5, 93K a year ago.
And what did that
So
one just get?
44 something. So it seems like that's probably the right
Yeah, about 20K per half grade.
estimated price that you would have got for a book like that.
I'm trying
All
to
right,
think
let's.
like what would be the Flash equivalent in Marvel, like for a first appearance.
Man, I feel like Flash is number 4, right, on the depth chart. You got Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. Then you
Yeah,
got
what year is
Flash.
that book?
It's the first Silver Age book, considered the first Silver Age book, and so I think it is 50. Let's see, it is 56. So right at the turn of golden and silver.
Yeah, I don't know. It just feels real cheap. Like to me, that just feels cheap.
I think it is real cheap, actually. I think like this because this for sure, in a way, is a lot of people like a lot of this is a Grail book in a way for a lot of people.
Hey,
Because
John, I
I
know
think
I'm looking at chat. I am a noob on D. I don't talk about DC at all. I never look at DC stuff, so I'm a fish out
I'm
of water on
definitely
this one.
yeah. I'm not the. I mean, on the census, 565 total. Like that's really low. Like like a Tales of Suspense 39 is like 2K, and like a AF15 is maybe like 3,500. So it's like but this it's right exactly in the middle, right? Where it's like some golden age books have like 100 census, and then silver starts to get to like 1, 2, 3, 4,000. So this is like right on that transition
Yeah,
census.
yeah.
But
Like I said, I
definitely
don't know anything about DC, but if you just threw that number at me, that would just feel off. Like just as a casual DC, you know.
right. All right, let's take a look here. There's some books I want to talk about. This one is, I think, is interesting. Marvel Comics #1. We'll talk about AF-15. We'll talk about Hulk. We'll talk about Wonder Woman. Talk about Turtles.
While you're clicking there, are you? So I heard you mention pre-stream about a 180, or before I popped on about 181. Do you have like a grade range that you're potentially looking for, or is it just going to be like what?
I mean, like I guess it depends on like where prices ultimately correct to. Like I'm not like a stickler for grade. Like for me, it'd be like I'm down
Present
to just
well
having
plus
the
place.
present pretty well. So for me, I would take like a 4 or 5 to a 6, something like that.
Yeah,
I'd be down with something like that.
that's probably one of my bigger on paper losses of the year.
Mm.
I would imagine was my 6.5 to whatever it's at today.
Right.
And I bought that
Yeah.
not at the peak.
It's crazy. I mean, we all have some losses. A lot of my books have losses for sure. X-Men 4 is my biggest overpaid book for sure.
I bought my 4.5 for 2,300, and I saw one on Grails, I think, for 1,800 like earlier this week.
Yeah. That book, that book for sure has had a pretty massive pullback. That was one I bought right at the beginning of 2022.
And I bought mine in the summer. I bought mine at Heroes Con, so I wasn't even like once again, not at the peak, but
Yeah. But you just gotta hold.
yeah, I didn't buy in the quick flip them, so it's not like, it's air quote loss, but it's not like,
Yeah.
I
It's
didn't
one of the
sell
things
it,
I always talk to Drew and Ryan. We're always talking about that. And like, I've made videos on it, like that easy money of like being able to do sort of like the quick flip on any of these books. And I just don't think that at this moment in time, you're going to have that ability. I mean, maybe if if you, let's say you bought that Flash book and you got it for 5,700, and you could probably list it on eBay. You'd probably be the only one who has it listed on eBay. But outside of that, it's going to be hard to get those quick flips unless it's a golden age book or something that is extremely rare where nobody can undercut you or list it lower than you.
Yeah, I talk about this on the card side of things sometimes. Like the stuff that has so many variables baked into it already. Like if you're looking to quick flip is not like the way anymore. Like you have to
Yeah.
find something that doesn't have things baked into, like Bagman this week. Like who the hell
Yeah.
saw that coming?
Right.
Like
Exactly.
you got to go get this stuff that's like on the trash heap, the bargain basement back issue bin, and just take flyers on it and hope that you're maybe make a shotgun approach and just grab a bunch of stuff for like, I don't know, $10 and shoot your shot on as many random things as you can and hope you hit on enough of them throughout like a year that it
Totally.
explodes. But you have to be quick though. Like, what's the odds in 2 weeks you're talking about Bagman being like back down to where it was a week ago? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's probably going to be the case. I mean, like, yeah, that's one of the things. Like, you
You can't get cute.
have it that day, and you could probably go to your LCS, and like find it for like a couple bucks and instantly sell it on eBay or whatever it is. You could definitely do that. But yeah, like you said, there's such a small window with that stuff, and it's so unpredictable. I mean, like, who knew? Or maybe people knew. Maybe there's somebody out there that knew all about Bagman, but it's hard to pull off that strategy. I definitely have a friend. I think you met Vancouver Comic Junkie. He's done really well doing the like finding the dollar bin book, like say like a Bagman, finding it for $1, being like, this is a 9.8 candidate, and slapping it. So he's into the book for like $30 and then like cashing in when it sells for like 300 or whatever. Right.
I was going to say, if you were willing to grade stuff like that, because you're seeing it more on the sports card side again, because I know we talked about this again like 2 weeks ago when you were on, like grading prices have come really down on the card side.
Right.
Like it's pretty affordable now. So what that actually allows you to do is kind of get a little cute and kind of take some flyers and be like, this is a card that I would not have graded in the last 2 years because it didn't make sense at the current pricing and turnaround time. But now that it's like $15 to slab a card, like I'm a lot more fast and loose on like my evaluations, because it's to his exactly what he's doing. Like if this pops off, who the hell has been grading whatever this is? And now I'm one of the few that have like this in a grade of whatever it is, whether it's card, comic, doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah, you'll be first to market. Like that's so much of those things too, where it's like even like you go back to like the infamous White Vision book, like I wonder how many CGC 9.8s were on eBay at the time, like, and just somebody was ready and got that sale. And I think that there's instances like Bagman where you could be that person for sure.
Yeah, and his turnaround times and stuff get better. Like, you know, if you take enough of those $30 flyers, it doesn't take much for like a $50 book in a 9.8 or whatever it is. You know, those low dollar books, it takes way less for them to 10x than it takes for, you know, someone mentioned X-Men 266 in chat.
Right.
Like to go buy a first appearance of Gambit in a 9.8 at like, I don't know what those go for now, like $700-800. The chances of that going to 1,600 are like slim to none. The chances of like quadrupling your money on a Bagman 9.8 is way easier. Like, really, when you really think about it.
Yeah. And
And it's less risk because you're putting out less upfront money.
Totally. I mean, like, yeah, you might, no pun intended, hold the bag, but like you're only in it for whatever, $35 or something. So it's like, ultimately it's not that big a deal. And like, you'll still be able to find that super ASM collector that's like, yeah, I'll buy this for $35.
At some point in time, if you really needed to move off that, you could probably make like an ever so slight profit on it, because once again, your cost point to entry is so low.
Yeah. Well, cost points that aren't very low.
Woo.
What I'm interested with this one is Marvel Comics #1. You know, this is the infamous, like, just the first Marvel Comics book. I guess they were timely still at the time, but Marvel with the name. And this is the first appearance of the old Human Torch, the second appearance of Submariner. This is a weird Grail book. I mean, it's definitely a Grail book, but it's also interesting that last few sales for this one have not been as strong, and it's surprising to me. Do you have any feelings on this one?
Like, that's one to me that, like, there is the list of books that I would want before that one in my like Ultimate Marvel collection is long.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. Like, I understand. Like, I completely, I'm not like trying to take anything away from it. Like, I get why it is held into the regard that it is. But personally, I just have no attachment to that. I don't know if it's just because of like, I don't care about the Human Torch, even though it's not even like kind of the real Human Torch. Like, other than the historical aspect and maybe the second appearance of Submariner, I don't know. I've never felt like a massive draw to that book at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, definitely a cool one to have because it's like, you know, a status symbol in that sense.
Yeah,
like
that's basically you're buying it because you almost like have to have it.
Yeah.
Like if you're on that level of collecting and you're missing that, like you kind of have to have one to be like, oh, there it is. But is anyone like, oh man, I have to get me one? Like I have so much attachment to this version of Human Torch and Submariner.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you're looking at that price tag, and this is what's so interesting is like all of a sudden when you're in that position where you're spending $300K on a book, like your like options at this price point are like enormous, right? Like you could look anywhere, almost any grade, any book, high grade, super rare. So it's hard to be like, yes, the 2.5 for $300K. That's my book. You know, it's such a specific person. But this one's interesting. I mean, it went for $293. I'm pretty sure that this is sold price includes this 15% buyer's premium, which is the price that gets recorded on. But if it is, this book, which I don't know if it was the same one, sold earlier this year on Comic Connect for $363. So it does seem like it is the same book to me.
Yeah, kind of. It has that the special label or whatever.
Yeah, it's got this little thing with the QES. So another one that someone bought this for $360, got $290 out of it earlier this year. So
percentage-wise, that actually held up better than the Flash by a mile.
That's true. And
the Flash
it does
dropped almost 45%, I think, like roughly.
Right.
And that's not a 40%. I mean, it's a drop for sure.
Right.
But then here's a bigger overall loss, but that held up better. But I have to imagine, like, how many times a year does that book even sell?
Well, here's what's really interesting, because not often, but a couple weeks ago in November, a 3.0 sold on Heritage for $223. So this is where it's like it gets so interesting because it's like, you know, nothing's like these.
Yeah, that one looks way
random.
Rougher.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe somebody didn't like the spine splits and stuff and all this, but you know, that's where it is. It's just like whoever's watching at the time, whoever was ready, You know, we talk about those aesthetic flaws, like how many bidders are there on this particular book? And maybe someone who's like, I really don't like spine splits. And they just bowed out.
Yeah, that looked like it had some handwriting or something, or maybe that was a 3.5 that had the handwriting.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
But it's interesting because it's like, yeah, maybe this,
Or yeah,
maybe
the
this,
3.0 the 3.0 had handwriting on in the title.
right. So yeah, maybe this person who bought the 2.5 for 363 earlier this year, this is way too high of a price. Like a
How
4 or
many
5
total
went
are
for
on census
360.
for that book?
35 copies. Universal, sorry, 67,
Holy smokes.
67, like, you know, whatever,
I mean,
restored
that's
or
why it
whatever.
goes for the price that it does. It just doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
It's invisible. Yeah, you can't find this thing. But it does feel like,
I can't believe there's 9s of that, like 9 4s and stuff.
I know it's so crazy. It did get repriced. I mean, a couple of people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 sales in the last year. So 5 people.
What's the last like big sale?
Let's see.
Like what's the last like higher grade?
So 6.0 in September here,
Oh, that
729.
9.2.
A pedigree, yeah, the 9.2 here, yeah, earlier this year, 9.2. This is the personal best, I think, for this book, 2.4 million. I mean, that's pretty wild. And with this like writing here, state stamp.
Wow, I'm surprised. I mean, I don't know like comic grading super well. I'm surprised I got a 9.2 with that much writing on the front.
Yeah, I think the CGC often can look the other way on these types of flaws, and I guess for a book like this, they're sort of willing to let it go. But it's pretty wild. I mean, like, you know, it's just, you know, no market is, or all these markets they're not really perfect in that way, right? Like it can just be that somebody wasn't watching or wasn't ready, or people, even rich, you know, the rich buyers are just holding on to their cash a little bit longer, even if that book is up for sale. But the AF-15s continue to go to market, continue to have their corrections. This is a book. This one just baffles me, or it doesn't baffle me. Like, I get it, but I just feel like, talk about the most paper-handed holders in the market right now. I think if you own an AF-15, I don't know, AF-15 collectors have just got the most paperist hands out there.
Well, this is the ultimate supply and demand thing. Like they just keep coming, to your point, like
yeah,
they just keep coming to market, like
they
over
keep
and over
coming.
and over again.
It's so crazy. Like, I can't understand. And it's definitely, it's not normal. Like, it's not normal. There are either, it could be, and this is, it all takes is a handful, but it could be like, this was just the book that, like, you got the crypto punk, you know, or pump. People made a bunch of money in crypto, and they were like, yeah, Spider-Man, I like Spider-Man. Spider-Man's cool. Let me buy this. And they just bought it. And now maybe the chickens come home to roost in that way. And people are just like, I got to pay my credit card bill or whatever.
The only thing I can think of is, you know, people bought because everyone thought everything was going to the moon.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden everything, and maybe they're in, like to your point, they could be in a lot of different things. They could have been in real estate, crypto, stocks, collectibles, whatever.
Yeah. Right.
And now things aren't going to the moon. So it's like people sitting down and like evaluating their investment portfolios and being like, okay, what are the things at the top of my list that I want to sell? And it's like, okay, you know, then they start like working their way through of like, people really want cash on hand right now. Like, cash is ultimately king. So if they're looking at that and being like, hey, I'm not primarily a comic guy, I am a real estate investor, let's just say.
Right.
And I bought this AF-15 and it's not going great. I would rather have the $100,000 and take the $50,000 hit and have the 100,000 in cash, because I see really good deals in real estate coming in the next 3 months.
Right.
I could do more with the 100,000 than I could just having the 100,000 sit in an AF-15.
Yeah.
Like people playing at this level, like that's the conversations that they're having with themselves. You know what I mean? It's not like, yeah, I mean, even on the low end, like I do this all the time too with cards. I've taken losses on cards plenty of times because it's like, okay, I bought this card at 1,000, it's at 500 now. Am I better off to ride this out to get back to 1,000 or get 500 in cash and make that work?
Totally. I think that is the right approach for sure. And, you know, like and this is if you want to just be able to turn your whatever you have in your collection into something you actually really want, or maybe you want to make money, or whatever you want to flip or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I always kind of think about that of my collection, right? Just thinking like, okay, take a step back. Let me look at this wall for a second. What Marie Kondo still brings me joy? What doesn't? But you're right. I think there are probably a lot of more people who just kind of look at it more of a not so emotional about it, and they just see this book and they're like, you know, the appreciation on this is going to be a lot less than if I deploy whatever money's left over in it into something else. Like I would just be better off like liquefying this and then, like you said, like buying a real estate property and I'm going to make a better return.
Yeah. And for a lot of people at this level too, it's like a line item. It may not even be, it may have never even seen a wall. Like it may have never left a wall. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
Like it could literally just be a line item on a spreadsheet for them. And they're like, okay, cool. I need to free up $400,000 in cash.
Yeah.
What do we have laying around that we can move out of,
Yeah. It's just like in, the Jeff Bezos Foundation Fund or whatever. He just buys up
I
stuff.
think we've both taken talking or made videos about like, don't be afraid to take losses. Like I think that's the one thing that people get really stuck in their head about. I don't want to eat. I don't want the red in the spreadsheet on this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a mistake and ride this thing
to
the bottom in some cases. Now IF15 is never going to zero. You know what I mean? If it's going to zero, we have bigger problems. But just in general across collectibles.
This is what I'm still wondering too. And it's like, and we talked about this at the beginning where it's like, okay, I do think that early 2023, we're going to test some levels for sure with prices. But, a lot of people, when I put out my index videos and stuff, like I'll get a lot of the comments of people who kind of have the doomer standpoint where it's like, oh, just you wait, man. Oh, you don't even know yet.
It's like, say that for 4 years.
No, I don't know. I can't see the future. Like, I don't think anyone can see the future. But they have that perspective. Like, I think we're going back to like 2017 prices. And sure, that's totally possible. But like, is it all that probable? Like my most simple sort of theory on that would be, well, are there more people who are collecting today than there were in, say, 2017? And if the answer to that question is yes, then just by volume of people in the hobby, like it seems like those values won't be touched. But I don't know if that's actually true. It's just sort of like I think
I could see certain things getting maybe not 2017 levels, but like 2019's, like early 2019. Once again, it's kind of back to that stuff that was like, this was never super popular to begin with. And then it got hot. Like, I don't want to pick like on the Eternals, but like stuff like that. Like,
those books might be tough. Yeah.
I think do have a capability to maybe even go lower than before, because I think what you could see happen, and I really haven't put like a ton of thought into this, I'm just kind of spitballing, is let's say prices do continue to go lower. Where's the money going to funnel to? People are going to be chasing like Hulk 181s, not Eternal ones, or you know what I mean? Like if everything's starting to come down, the books that people really want are going to find their floors faster because more people really want them. And it's like, if you have $5,000 in your comic book budget for January, let's say, and you're seeing good deals on Eternals, Shang-Chi, Werewolf by Night, whatever, you might let those pass because you're like, oh, I've always really wanted a Hulk 181, or I've always really wanted an AF15, or I've always really wanted a Jim 85 or 83, whatever. And you're going to wait and save those reserves for more key, like better keys or better books, whatever you want to call it. And the money filters towards those, and like the floor prices hit sooner because there's more people willing to step in and say, this is getting too cheap. Whereas on an Eternals 1, your buyer pool is way less. Like, it's going to have to be like a tremendous deal before someone's like, let me spend my comic book budget on this because I would rather spend it on, air quotes, better things.
Right. And it's kind of one of those things in talking about, say, books that are like the second appearances or like the first titled series, like that sort of thing kind of is that the values are proportional to, like, if all of a sudden, like, a second appearance is valuable, when the first appearance values are so high that it's like, well, I might as well get this book because at least I still get to have something cool. But if all of a sudden the first appearance value goes down in price, well, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I'll just buy it. I'll just buy the first appearance. And so the second appearance price really, really falls off. So it's sort of a similar thing where it's like, hey, I can't afford ASM 1, but Eternals are kind of cool. Maybe I'll buy the Eternals book. But as soon as like ASM 1 goes back to your budget, it's like, screw the Eternals. I'm gonna get this ASM book, so it's a similar thing too. And that's kind of why like the historical collecting precedent is kind of always a good thing to remember, where it's like, yeah, maybe Dane Whitman Black Knight is going to be one of the best books. Like maybe the Black Knight's going to be one of the best characters of the MCU and everyone's going to want this book. But like in the history of comic book collecting, it seems like, generally speaking, Hulk, Spider-Man, Thor, X-Men, those are the ones that generally people want, so they're always going to be the more safer ones. And people will always move back to those as price is correct.
Yeah, I mean, my list of stuff that I want to put together for my X-Men stuff is like, I got tons of save searches that I'm watching, and I'm like, just keep falling. I'm filling some of these holes.
Yeah, X-Men 1, X-Men 101, all those books. Yeah.
Yeah, I have stuff from the Dark Phoenix saga. Like,
I have a very stupid, unscientific theory about X-Men books, and that is when you go into auctions, like the one we're watching right now, and we're going to check back in on these auctions in a second. But when you go into these auctions, X is the last batch of books in the alphabet. Like when you're watching these things, it's like, okay, the auction opens, we're at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's all good. Like we're going to, look at some amazing Spider-Man books. Everyone's going to bid and everyone's going to buy, their grails. And then by the time you get to X's, like East Coasters, like, I'm tired. I don't want this book anymore. Who cares? It's like, I've already bought like 5 AF or amazing Spider-Man books. I'm done. I'm tapped out. And I feel like all it takes is a few buyers who like check out by the time you get to X, and that puts a damper on some of those X prices. And they're like, a lot of the X-Men books have been quickly correcting. They were like some of the first ones to really correct. I have no way to prove that theory, but I feel like there's got to be something to that.
Yeah, it could be. All right. Thanks for letting me sneak on. I got to run. I got a couple minutes to go before my own live stream starts. So,
all right. Well,
good chat as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for hopping on. Definitely, if you guys don't know Neo Cards and Comics, definitely go check his channel out. It's in the chat. Hop into his live stream after this one. And thanks, Rob. I'll talk to you soon.
I'll see you guys later. Happy holidays, everybody.
Bye. All right. Well, let's kind of check back in. Thank you guys so much for hanging out in the chat. Haven't been, sorry, I've been missing some of your guys' comments here. Let's see here. How about talking to the real collectors, Mickey, not all the pie in the sky cloud gazing? What do you mean? We're all real collectors. We're all real collectors. All right. Todd McFarlane, what do you have to say here? Speaking of the current change in market, what's your favorite animal? My favorite animal, Todd, is probably my dog. My dog is my favorite animal. All right, let's take a look at some of these sales here. So what we were saying with the AF15, 6.5, 1 for 110. Another AF15 pulling back in price, correcting in price. Now, the 110 sale is still above the 2020 price. We go back, we rewind the clock here. Last few sales for this, obviously at the height, 180 earlier this year for the 6.5 and 110, $70,000 less. We had a 156 before that. We had a 120 before that one. We had someone got a 72,000 in 2020 and 100,000 in 2019 at a fixed price on eBay. But this is really, to me, I think is like the ultimate test, the question. Like, are we going to be testing these 2019, 2018 prices in early 2023? So far, not for every book. Some books have tested those prices, depending on what they are. But so far, even the AF15s that have had the big pullbacks are still holding at that price point. So it's really interesting to watch that and see if that is the case. But if we get situations like this, where all of a sudden you guys see you have Silver Surfer number 3, First Mephisto, and you get this many sales in this many auctions where it's like you have a 7.0, a 6.0, a 5.0, a 3.5, and a 2.5. You have 5 Mephisto books going up for auction. Like, these are going to destroy everyone else's prices. You know, you have this 2.5 going for $200 here, and then you have a 3.5 go for 221. So just for $20 more, you could find yourself with a full grade bump here. And then just for $130 more, you can go up to a 5. And then just for $75 more than that, you can go up to a 6. And then for $30 more than that, you can go up to a 7. And so that's a lot of times what's happening here. Obviously, at a certain point, your price is your price, and you got to cap it. You got to say, hey, look, I can only spend 300. And if that means I have to buy a 3.5, that means I have to buy a 3.5. But when you have these many copies going up for sale, that is definitely going to have its toll on the values of the books. And that's kind of what we're seeing a lot with some of these auctions. You know, when the books come up for sale and all of a sudden you have like 4 AF-15s in the same heritage auction, like that happened like a few weeks ago. And that's crazy. I mean, how can the books compete if you have 4 of them? Like, how many buyers with deep pockets are ready to go and pull the trigger? And that's going to be one of the things. So the question to me and to you guys, and as I even think about where we're going in 2023, is it's like, is it going to be that people need to liquefy and we're going to see like massive influx of inventory coming to auction market? That's certainly possible. I mean, we were hearing, or one of the dealers I spoke to in my video where I was talking to the dealers, Lawrence P. Dots, he was saying at his shop, he's had an influx of people bringing in collections, right? People looking to sell their collections, whether it's because they need money, maybe it's because they need Christmas money, whatever the case may be. That's one thing. We're definitely going to get a lot of that, right? A lot of people are going to want to get rid of their collections, or maybe they're over comics, or maybe they just need cash and they want to deploy it somewhere else. And that's one way to evaluate what's going to happen in the market. But, you know, those collections that get liquefied are not necessarily going to be reflected in GPA prices or be reflected in, you know, what happens at auction. So the question is like, it's a very specific type of seller who has like an AF-15 who's going to list it on Comic Connect. So my question is, in general, when we hit 2023, are we going to have people who need to liquefy, or are we going to have people that are just hesitant to bid? Does that make sense? Like, there's almost like a difference there. It's like, are we going to get the influx of supply, or are we going to get the pullback in demand? Either way, it's going to have an effect on values. But I would say that it would be worse for collectibles as a whole. I mean, worse relative, right? I mean, yeah, I know a lot of you guys are like, no, they keep dropping. I want to buy something. I want to buy it. You know, that's one thing. But I mean, worse, like, let's say if you're holding the bag or whatever, worse in terms of values. If all of a sudden a lot are hitting market versus if people are just being conservative with their bidding. Like, there's still demand there. People want AF-15, but they're just a little unsure of what's happening in the economy. They're just cutting their spending a little bit. So they're just being a little more cautious. So that's kind of what they're, you know, those are the differences, right? And so it's kind of interesting to think about like which of those two scenarios is going to manifest. Ultimately, it's still going to have its effect on comic book values either way. All right, let's hop over this auction here and let's see what is coming up. Anything kind of exciting? I need to check in with the chat as well, guys. Appreciate you all hanging out. Oh, this book right here. I was curious to bid on this one myself. The Strange Tales, number 89 here. First appearance of Fing Fang Foom. This is just kind of a cool book. Cool book to have. It's really interesting. I mean, obviously this is a key because, you know, Fing Fang Foom, a fun character and all. But these, what do you guys think about these monster books in general? I feel like I want to make a video about post-code monster books. You know, it's hard to kind of qualify these books or figure out, you know, where the demand is for these things. I think that they are fun, but you know, they're not like all these things. Strange Tales 77 and Strange Tales 81. They're fun monster books, but they're obviously not pre-code horror. The covers are not nearly as interesting, in my opinion. So it's kind of a strange niche in the collecting hobby itself. Like, who are the people that really like to go all in on those sort of post-code monster books? But here's another example right here. We have 4 Strange Tales 110s coming up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with those books. But that is quite a few on the supply right there. Tom McFarling with the super chat here. Free Palestine. P.S. Free Palestine. Well, Todd, thank you so much. Good to have you in the chat today. I know you've been busy signing all of those CGC books that were sent your way. If you guys don't know, Todd had a huge CGC signing submission that was just the other month, actually. And I think I was going to do a video about signature books and talk about them a little bit in terms of, when we get situations like this, when Todd is signing away at CGC and there's like an influx, let's say how many Spawn ones do you think got sent in to have Tom McFarlane sign them? I mean, he made the offhanded joke about there's going to be more signed Spawn ones than unsigned Spawn ones, because it's just a book that he signs all the time. And it is interesting to think, like, obviously there's going to be a breaking point for the value of the signature book versus the unsigned book. But could it ever be that the value would be lower than the actual cost to get Todd's signature itself, which costs like $100 and something. Kind of interesting. Up the down 7. I think the liquidation is happening now in the past couple of months. Anybody that survives the next 2 months without selling their collection are probably just going, yeah, that's a good point too. And that's something, as Rob was here and I was just kind of talking to him, like trying to figure out like how much of this stuff is already like priced in, so to speak. I mean, I think things could definitely get worse, right? Like nobody really knows. And everyone might get hit with really hard times and have to liquefy like their collection. People talk about we'll get more layoffs. Like all of a sudden, if someone gets laid off and they need cash ASAP, that's definitely going to happen. But like how much of it is that already priced in, right? Like how many people kind of saw what was happening in the market with the current downturn and we're already thinking to themselves, oh man, I see where this is going. Let me sell off some stuff now. Let me get cash in hand now. And that could be one of the reasons why, you see all these AF-15s, right? Like everyone is seeing where the wind is blowing and saying to themselves, well, shit, I better sell ASAP, and so you have this influx of supply, and you could be right that maybe the supply is hitting now or has hit for the last month, 2 months, and will hit for the next 2 months leading into 2023. And then there will eventually be a stabilization point where people kind of feel like, okay, like that, I don't want to call it panic selling, but let's just call it that so we can quantify it. That sort of like panic liquefaction selling that part has passed. And now it's about sort of finding the floors, and then whatever else happens like in the market, if times are tough or people lose their jobs or whatever the case, then we can figure out kind of what goes from there. There are so many graded AF-15s. There will always be multiple available for sale at every auction. Deep boxes will buy, but price is driven by availability. Yeah, totally. T-shoot. I mean, it's all relative. It's like relative availability, right? Like AF-15 or Golden Age books are definitely obviously the most rare, right? When you get to censuses that have 50 on the census, or like even 100 on the census, or even 200 on the census, or we were talking about the showcase book that has 560 or whatever it was. And then you get to AF-15, it's got 3,000 on the census. So like rare, but like not really, but like could be rare depending on how we want to talk about it, because it's definitely rare relative to ASM 300. But you are right that in any given auction, there is always going to be an AF-15. When you walk into any Comic Con in the country, somewhere in the building, there is going to be an AF-15. So it is a book that you can always find for yourself, for sure. But obviously what it has going for it is the other side of that supply equation, which is the demand side. And everybody wants an AF-15. I mean, I know a lot of collectors, and shout out to Comic Collector Geek, see in the chat there. Like I or like Ryan, Automatic Comics, you guys are, great Golden Age guys. I feel like you get to that point in comic book collecting where, or it's like a food critic, it's like you've had so many pastas at this point. You can't enjoy pasta anymore. You got to like fly to the most obscure places and eat the most obscure ingredients to get that same dopamine hit, in your collection. So you got to have like the most random book to get that pop. Like the AF-15, it's just not that exciting anymore. You always see it. I understand there are people like that, but generally speaking, AF-15 is always going to be exciting for people, and so there's always going to be that demand, for sure. But yeah, relative scarcity. Still, 3,700 on the census is a lot, depending on how you want to look at it. BMV says, real question. What's your outlook on Darkhawk for next year? How many copies of Darkhawk 1 do you have? Every year is a good year for Darkhawk. Look, my outlook on Darkhawk 1 is that not all comic books are recession proof. But if I were to pick one comic book that is 1,000% guaranteed recession proof book, it would be Darkhawk #1. 100%. How many copies do I have? BMV? Not enough. Not enough. I'll tell you that much. Comic Connect Wizard 1 Newsstand 9.8 ends in just over 2 hours now at 13.5K WTF. Luke, we got to talk about Wizards. I need to make a video about Wizards. Been meaning to do it. Maybe after this sale, this will be a good video to talk about. I can do something about that. I'm assuming that the book that you're talking about is the San Diego Comic-Con version, because that's something, if you guys don't know, Wizard Magazine, the magazine in the 90s that gave the comic book pricing, have started to get really hot in the market. And I'm actually wondering if we're going to hit a point where some of the other Wizards really start to catch on. There's actually a few Wizard Magazine covers that they're like amazing. They're classic covers to me. I mean, but you got to be careful with the Wizard Magazines, because it's really immature in terms of how they are collectibles in the market right now. You think like they're hitting market. People are starting to get excited about them. People are bidding them up. The San Diego Comic-Con version of it in a 9.8 newsstand or whatever it is, like, I'm sure that it's rare, but like, how do we really know how rare is, right? There could be a guy who was all in on Wizard, right? Like 10 years ago, he was like, dude, man, I'm telling you, Wizard's going to pop. Wizard is going to pop super hard. And he's been stacking them, right? He's been stacking them. And then finally, this is it. This is the time. And he could be sitting on like 1,000 copies. You know what I mean? So like, that's, you never really know, but certainly the Wizards are popping off, and specifically the San Diego Comic-Con edition, because of the rarity of it. If you guys don't know, when Wizard first started, they had a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive version on it. Basically the same cover, except it says San Diego Comic-Con on it somewhere. And then they went on to print however many they did. And the San Diego Comic-Con one is the one that is really blowing up in price in the market. 9.8's regular edition are still like, I don't know what they are off the top of my head, few $100 or like, still expensive. Maybe it's $1,000. Actually, I don't know. But the San Diego Comic-Con ones are really blowing up. But we'll take a look. If we're still streaming, we'll definitely watch that one. I need to get back to the auction, but I want to have the conversation with you guys as well. The horror genre is always a safe bet, and the monster books kind of ride that wave. Plus, they also cross over with the superhero books. Yeah, I mean, definitely, if we're talking horror genre in terms of like the PCH horror genre, definitely feels like those will always be in demand. I mean, obviously there is a massive American history related to the PCH books. You guys know I've been buying a couple EC books. I like PCH books. I tend to prefer EC books because, I'm an emotional collector when it comes down to it. And so EC as a brand means more to me because of Tales from the Crypt and growing up and enjoying that brand. So I tend to like those covers more than just any sort of generic PCH book, although I love PCH in general. But yeah, those will always be safer bets, strictly due to census. At the end of the day, it's about like, what's the downside risk to books that you buy? And if the census is low enough, which for Golden Age, in most cases, it's going to be low enough that you can kind of be assured that there isn't going to be a bunch of paper-handed sellers who are going to undercut you and devalue your book, then it makes it a safer bet, right? Whereas like if we're talking about AF-15, if you buy one for 6.5 or whatever, you spend $100,000 on it, and then some other person is just trying to liquidate theirs, well, they're going to devalue your book. So it's like, the less census you have, the less chances there's going to be somebody who can undercut you or reprice you. And that makes those ones safer. Let's see here. Shout out to Comics with Bonics. What's going on, Steven? I think values will pull back a bit into 2023, but I don't see top tier books going back to 2020 prices. More people currently in the hobby, and a few good movies in the MCU will keep demand going. Yeah, that's the other part too. I mean, movies are definitely like the bonus, right? Like I try to, like I said, I'm an emotional collector, so I like anyone can be swayed by movies, right? Like I can definitely watch whatever it is, Ant-Man, and maybe Ant-Man is going to be my favorite character after I watch a movie. That's totally possible. But yeah, I think the movies are always going to increase demand to a degree, and it's going to manufacture that for sure. Let me stop myself from this question. We'll take a look at these Strange Tales one. But yeah, I mean, my theory kind of just holds that it feels like there's still going to be more collectors. And yeah, 2023 could be really bad, but we have to remember like 2020 was also really bad for a lot of people in terms of money. Like when COVID lockdowns were happening, I mean, there was a lot of uncertainty for what was going to happen. Now it might not be the same, right? And I don't know if people were getting like laid off necessarily in the same kind of way, but there was a lot of fear in the market. Like, you guys remember the stock market, like in March and April of 2020, like that thing tanked. Like everybody was selling off, and a lot of comics were selling off too. So you would think that maybe if 2023 does the same thing, like 2020 was a good sort of like a predictor, or a good like example of what might happen again next year. All right, so here's kind of what is funny with these Strange Tale books, or what I was saying with Comic Connect is, as you can see here, like this auction ended, but this one's still going on. This one's still going on. So if somebody bids, the clock goes back to 3 minutes. So these Strange Tales books, looks like we keep getting bids in, and they keep bumping back up the time. But let me kind of pull this up. I'm curious to see what some of these books go for. And because Strange Tales is a book that, again, relative rarity, right? Relative rarity. 2,200 total graded books. Now, there might be a ton of raw books out there, but this is definitely a book that is, generally speaking, like has less census than a lot of other kind of mega keys. Sorry, let me just clear some tabs here, guys. A lot of other mega keys. And so I don't see the same kind of like liquidation for this book that I have seen with, like, say, AF-15, which is very odd. But this is one of those books where the cover, say what you will, the cover is not the best, right? I think it's fair to say that it's not the best. But I do think that, and so to that reason, I think a lot of people who buy this book, they actually want it, right? Because you have to really want this book to like hold it. You know what I mean? Or it's like, or you have to really just love Doctor Strange to like get this book, because like the cover's not that great. So maybe there's just not as many sort of like people looking to flip in that same kind of way, like how AF-15 was doing it. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen with this one, because it hasn't been as repriced, or it hasn't been repriced as much as some of the other books have. So last sale for this was 11.4 and 15.6. Looks like we're going to get a slightly lower bid, but I would say going from 11.4 to 10.1 is not too bad overall. I mean, that's a correction, but yeah, I wouldn't say that that's a big deal. Dropping by $1,000. Last sale 11,400, which is just a week ago. But it does go to show that, well, let's just see. This is a white page copy. This is also a white page copy. Generally the same type of thing. But it does go to show, I mean, sometimes it's just maybe there were 2 extra bidders in this heritage auction that wanted this book that boosted up 1,000. But 10,000, I mean, 11,000, 10,000, kind of the same to me, to be honest. 6.5, 4,700. Let's take a look at the 6.5 here. Some of the last sales for this. So 6,300. So 4,700, 6,300. That's definitely a bigger drop for sure. That's, I'd say, either a good deal or a bigger drop, however we want to slice it. So there was definitely a point where somebody bought this for 10,000 earlier in the year. We went to 8,000. We went to 5,700. We bounced back up to 73, went to 63. Again, I've been using the formula where I look at the 2020 price, generally speaking. So here in 2021, February, it was like $5,000. The sale before that was like 3,200. So I would call it like a 4K book, and then I would just kind of do some year over year returns just to see like, okay, where roughly should it be now? So 4,600 to $5,000. I think somebody got this for 4,700. I'd say that's a really good price. Now, the problem with this book is that it's cream to off-white pages. And that's another one too, where it's like someone could just have that bias against cream to off-white pages. $4,000 for the 6K book, or for the graded a 6. We had 4,400 last auction. So again, another little bit of a hit for sure. Still above the 2020 price. All of these sales are always going to be above the 2020 price. 3,200 for the 5.5. That seems like a really good price for that. I remember when 3Os were going for 3,200. This book at one point was a $1,000 per grade type of book. And as we can see, 3,800 was the last sale for the 5.5. So 3,200, somebody got a great deal on this one. Old label, cream to off-white as well. So, those things can hurt it. So it depends. I mean, all these books having a little bit of corrections, a little bit of pullbacks, but kind of to be expected. And we're still above that 2020 value. So I'm still waiting. To see us hit values below 2020. There are certainly books that have done it, right? If we look at, the Morbius book, ASM 101, we look at Eternals 1. I think certain Werewolf by Night 32s have tested 2020 prices as well. But there's definitely not been many books that I've seen, Silver Age books I'm talking about, that I've seen go to 2019 prices. And while there are some books that have tested 2020, I haven't seen the majority of them go below 2020 yet. I think it's certainly possible. It could definitely happen. And that's what I'm most interested to see. I'm most interested to see if that does happen. All right, let me catch up with the chat here. It sounds like you have really become a golden age convert. No. I mean, I still have I like all comic books. There's I like some modern stuff. It's really just like, you guys know, it's where are you going to spend your money? Like there's so many books that I would want. But I just have a personal, like I said, I'm an emotional collector. So even movie spec aside, MCU aside, like I really did grow up watching all the Marvel cartoons, reading all the Marvel comic books. So I have the most, nostalgia and affinity towards Marvel Silver Age in general. But there's a lot of great Golden Age books I would get for sure. Okay, let's see. Excuse me. Economy and lull in Marvel movies. Having another Thor movie won't increase Thor books, but will raise prices. Exciting new movies. I think so. If I understand kind of what you're getting at, Jacob, sort of like, is the movie excitement thing kind of done? And in my opinion, for now, I think it is. Now, I even just made a video this week where I was talking about the Into the Spider-Verse trailer that came out, and we did see movement in the market, right? We did see some Ultimate Fallout 4 sell. Not that they're making record prices, but it does have an effect on somebody. They watch the trailer, they say, I do want an Ultimate Fallout 4, and then they hit buy it now on eBay. But they're just not like buying it at the all-time record price anymore. I kind of feel like, depending on where we go, I should make a video about this, but you can really trace back a lot of boom cycle periods in at least Marvel comic books in relation to Avengers movies. And what I mean by that is after Avengers 1, which was 2012, after Age of Ultron, which is 2015, after Infinity War Endgame, 2018, 2019, the Avengers tentpole movies create like kind of like a bull market or like kind of increased demand. And I do think it just has to do with just what seems to be kind of like empirically true, right? Like the Avengers movie comes out, it's a massive success, takes over pop culture. Everyone's excited about it. Everyone goes, oh yeah, comic books are cool. Hey, I should go back into my comic book store. And then people think about this and they're like, oh, well, yeah, man, I really did like Doctor Strange in that. Oh, I should get Strange Tales 110. Or like, oh, like, I wonder if, oh, in the next Avengers movie, like, oh, it's going to like do this. And so people like really start to think. I think that these tentpole films do have that effect. So I do think, we might trade sideways for a few years, but I have a feeling when we get to Secret Wars and we have that Avengers, Kang Dynasty, Avengers, Secret Wars, either that year or the year after, like if you're somebody out there who is a seller, you're going to need to take gains in those years for sure. Like that will be the year to sell again in 2026, 2025, 2026. I think that will be the movie comes out. People are going nuts again for whatever character related to the movie. But that would be my guess. Swag, you said you started looking into coins, right? What's happening in that market right now comparatively? I did a little bit of looking into coins, but I'm no expert. I'm definitely no expert. But my general understanding is that it's like all collectible markets. I mean, you have the truly rare Grail coins that they'll never go down in price. You have some one of the Grail coins that's really cool is from the Roman Empire and stuff, like a Julius Caesar coin or whatever it is. Like that's always going to be, can't put a number on it, like whatever, hundreds of thousands, $1 million, depending on the grade. But I do think that some coins have definitely gone down in price as well, and like even like gold and silver, right? Like the actual materials have not performed very well in this current recession. So even coins are not able to be recession proof, even though they actually have literal intrinsic value, because at the end of the day, a quarter is still always going to be a quarter. Do you think that there are that many real collectors out there anymore, i.e. hoarders, whereas the comic book becomes straight commodity? I think the latter for AF-15s. Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't know if I don't know if there's any way for us to know, right? Like, I don't know if we could ever really answer that. I think that what seems evident is that there are a lot more sellers in the market than there ever have been. So that could be another part of it. We talk about the 2020. So this would be a great counter argument to my thought of, hey, if there's just more collectors now than there were in 2020, then by sheer volume, the floor prices won't go below 2020. So a good counter argument to that would be, are there more sellers in the hobby today than there were before? Are there more people who are looking to flip or find money in the hobby? And if that's the case, or if collectors are even old school collectors, let's say you've been a collector for 15 years and you're just like, maybe I should start selling some of my books, right? And you just start to think like, if there are more sellers and you're looking at things like Whatnot, like, hey, I got 20,000 books in my collection. I've been sitting on these for 20 years. Whatnot seems like an easy way to sell some books. Like, let me hop on that. Like, then yeah, there might be more. To your point about like how many real collectors are there anymore? I think there are still collectors, but I do also think there are more sellers. So maybe it feels like there's not like real collectors in that sense. So it's really hard to figure that out exactly. Like, but that would be my thoughts on that. What's going on, Planet Arizona Comics? Good to see you, man. Pure Comic Collector, what's going on? Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. BMV all held, all in Darkhawk, 100%, 100%. All right, let me see. I'm gonna scroll down, catch up to the chat here. Let's see, and then I'll kind of reverse back and answer some questions. It's 2026 is going to put 2021 to shame. That would be my bold prediction. Now, let it be known, we're going to put this we're saving this in the live stream, right? But I really do think that when we get to those Avengers movies, and in theory, I would assume that outside of comic books, the economy is in a better spot at that time. That'll be the year to sell. Like if you're somebody who is going to look to sell some of your collection, that would be my guess. That would be my 2021 type of year when we get to that point. Comic Collector Geek, any books in this auction you are trying to get? You know how it is. It's like you got some ones you're like, oh, maybe, but there's nothing that I'm like I'm 100%, I'm going all in on this. And it's interesting because even some of those like Mephisto books that I was just talking about, which I totally missed. Like there was that 7.0 that went for like $400. I probably would have bought that just to upgrade mine. So there's books like that I look at where I think to myself like, oh yeah, I could just upgrade mine a little bit because I could just sell mine currently that I have if it goes for a good deal. But nothing too specific overall. There are some interesting Golden Age books, of course, that I got my eye on. I want to see what the Superman. I think the Superman actually is coming up. Yeah, it is coming. Okay, 14 minutes. We can't miss this, guys. We can't miss this. We got to see what Superman's going to sell for. This is the prize book of the night, I think, of the auction. But yeah, there's definitely some interesting books that I got my eye on. But while we're streaming, I'm probably not going to bid while we're streaming because I can't multitask. Can you dissect the Strange Tales 114s as far as bids and market? Strange Tales 114s. Let's go back up here. Oh, look at this. So we had a 7.0 sell for 410. We had a 5.0 sell for 205, and then a 4.5 sell for 201.25. And this one had a buyer's premium on it. Well, I don't know if there's really anything to say for this particular book. This person who bid on the 5 did way better than this person who bid on the 4.5 because this has a 15% buyer's premium. Comic Connect is weird in that sense that it's like not, as far as I understand it, not all of their auctions have buyer's premiums on it. So here's a perfect example. You see the 5.0 doesn't say that it has a buyer's premium, and then the 4.5 here says a 15% buyer's premium will be added to this item at the conclusion of the auction. So like this person got this for 201 times 15% on that, which is what, $30. So like this person paid more for the 4.5 than this person paid for their 5.0. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything too specific about that whole thing. Andrew here, theory, within the next 5 years, the demand value of many horror books will be at their peak, as I think that the demand seems to be from mainly older collectors, and the interest of young collectors is small. Yeah, that's an interesting theory. So what I would say is, again, it comes down to supply, right? Like the supply. So if we're talking about some PCH horror books that, let's say, only have 100 on the census, like even if it is older collectors, who want this book, all you need is 101 people who want it. You know what I mean? Like you need more than that, obviously, but to make it to sort of like, explain my point, you really don't need that many people who want the book to keep the values pretty high because the census is so low. Whereas if you get to like ASM 300, right, and there's like 20,000 books on the census, well, all of a sudden you need 20,000 people who want this book. So that's what makes it harder. So it's an interesting thing. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, pop culture, people age out of pop culture, right? Like pop culture is generational in a sense. do kids today care about Mighty Mouse? No, nobody cares about Mighty Mouse. This is why I have a little bit more of a positive outlook on Marvel and DC, like superhero characters, because I do believe that 100 years from now, there will still be kids who watch Spider-Man. Now, they may not care about comic books and owning physical media, but I do think that Spider-Man is effectively grandfathered in. Like, I feel like this character is going to be a legacy character for a long time. And so long as Disney owns it, and I don't see Disney as a brand ever folding, Disney basically owns childhood. I think that will always be popular. Similarly, I think that the PCH books, outside of their pop cultural significance, which they don't have much, but they have like American significance. They have like the history of American culture and the censorship movement of the 50s. And so I think that there is some importance to them in that way. So I think that they'll at least have that demand a little bit. But I do think that you're right, that I think that PCH books got hot like other books too. I think that I think at the end of 2021, there was a pedigree collection that went on sale. And in that pedigree collection, there were a lot of PCH books. So what had happened was a lot of PCH books got repriced in the market. And what that did is all of a sudden, if you have a bunch of books getting repriced, like, oh my God, Chamber of Chills 19 is now worth what? It's worth this. Like, that is the cultural movement to like collectors in the market to be like, oh, PCH books are blowing up. Like, oh my God, like I got to get me some PCH books. So I do think that 2022, and I'm like in this, right? Like I'm a part of this too. Like, right. I started buying these stuff as well. So I think that 2022, it's like, was kind of a move, a year for PCH books getting hot and repriced and all that. Because PCH books were doing really well in 2021, but it's not like when we talk about those April 2021 prices when things were going insane. It's not that like I think that there were PCH books that did go insane, but like you guys know what I mean. Like it's the collecting culture wasn't necessarily like talking about them as much as they were recently. So I think in the next couple years, you might have like windows where PCH books are not the hotness. And then, the 9.8, I don't know if there's a 9.8, but like whatever that 9.8 Chamber of Chills 19 goes on sale. And then all of a sudden, it gets $1 million. And that creates like the wave of collectors going like, oh my God, like PCH books, and everyone's talking about them again. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I'm kind of rambling on your thought here, but it could be a theory. It could be a theory for sure. Hey, Swag, are you interested in any older Disney comics? Yeah, actually. I think that the Disney comics are pretty cool. That's another one where it's just like emotional collector for me, where it's like I like Mickey Mouse, I like Donald Duck, I like those types of characters. And there are definitely a few covers that I really like, the Disney covers. I don't think the Disney covers are ever really going to like have a collector movement, right? Where I don't think that the, there's going to be like a PCH boom for cartoon books. But I do think that there's definitely a lot of Disney books that are underrated and undervalued. And I think the Disney books that have that, that kind of like that PCH style, where like maybe the cover's a little bit shocking. Like you see some books that are like Donald Duck holding a gun, to his face and stuff like that. Or you have like Mickey Mouse with a shotgun, like these types of books that it's like, it's kind of wild from like a censorship standpoint that they were drawing like Mickey Mouse with a shotgun. I think that some of those books could definitely get hot in the market. So I have my eye on some of them, and I do think that they're pretty cool and definitely interesting. Ian Green, what's going on, man? It asks, is the video game first appearance the move? It really seems like younger generations, they will have that nostalgia. It could be. It could be the move. I think about that a lot for sure in terms of like, I guess, are we talking about video game first appearance like in comic books? So like we're saying, oh, the first Pikachu appearance in a comic book. Like to me, I wonder if does that have any sort of like value in it where it's like, wouldn't you rather with the kid who loves Pikachu, wouldn't they rather just own the graded Pokemon Game Boy game or like the Pokemon card, right? That has Pikachu on it or Charizard or whatever the case is. And so I wonder if like, yes, it's cool that it's in the comic book, but like, does that matter so much? Um, will because I feel like you either want to collect comic books or you don't. I mean, you could be a super collector who it's like, I want everything Pikachu. But I would still think that the true like money play for a video game character, for instance, would in fact be the actual origin of that character. So if they came from the video game, if it's Zelda, if it's Link, the graded video game is where it's at, not necessarily the comic book with the first appearance of Link in it. But there's still different types of collectibles that people would want. So I don't know. With kids, is that what kids are going to want? Maybe, but will they want it? They'll love those characters, but will they want them in comic book form? I'm not sure. Okay, let's see here. We're getting close. Speaking of video game characters, we got the Super Mario Brothers here. These are some fun books. I don't think this is not the first appearance of Mario. This is the first cover appearance of Mario. I think it is what it is. The Blip magazine one is the one that is actually the first appearance of Mario. But here's like the perfect example. Like, I mean, if you're a fan of Mario, it's cool to have this comic book, but like, Mario came from Mario 1 on Nintendo. So like, wouldn't you want the Nintendo cartridge as your collectible to cherish more so than the comic book? My answer, I would think that you would want the cartridge more than the comic book. But I guess if you're a Super Mario whale, you're going to take any collectible that has any relation to Mario. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. My 14-year-old was sitting next to me and we were arguing about comics and video games. Well, so was your kid like, did they want the video games instead of the comic book? Yes, the video game is big and retro. The collector who has it all will look into comics too. Okay, yeah. So I guess like right. I'm following what you guys are saying here too. It's like if you're a whale collector and you like everything Mario, comic, sports card, whatever it is, cartridge, you're going to get everything Mario. I'd rather have that comic cover of Mario than the one dude. Yeah, totally. That comic, the blip with the dude playing the video game is like, I mean, it definitely takes the wind out of the sails. Even Strange Tales 110 has a better cover than the Blip comic book. All right, what are we at with this auction? So 3 minutes left here on Superman #1. Let's prepare this because I'm curious where we are at on Superman 1 in terms of the recent fair market values, recent sales, because we have had a couple of them sell this year. Here's a 3.0 went for 420. Here's a 1.8 went for 288. And we're only at 310 right now. So we got to beat 420. So here we are, guys. We're under the minute. Okay, so we got the 330 bid. So now the clock resets to 3 minutes. Clock resets to 3 minutes. Based on where we're at right now, this could be considered a weak sale because this 4.0 sold in June for $815K. Now, here's the other part that we have to discuss because, I'm looking at this book and I don't know how you guys feel, but these stains, definitely an eyesore on that yellow cover. Stains are kind of an eyesore on the yellow cover. You compare it to this 4.0 right here and you have a nice clean yellow. So it does feel like this book is going to hit a lower price simply due to the aesthetics. And this is kind of what, I was talking with Rob earlier in the day where it's like those aesthetics can really have a factor on whether a book hits a certain price or doesn't, or whatever the case may be. But it's interesting to see with this one here. I mean, we're getting a few bids in. The clock's resetting. We'll see where this finishes. What's the first appearance of Link or Zelda? I can't remember. I think is it Zelda #1, Link #1, something like that? Depends on the character. Pokemon would be a card, I assume, and Mario would be a video game. Yeah, I think wherever the character originated from. So, like, for instance, Star Wars. Although, did the comic books come first? Let's pretend the comic books didn't come first, guys. Like, to me, it's like I would get why you would want Star Wars as a graded VHS, right? Like, that makes sense. It's like that seems cooler to own the graded VHS than Star Wars #1, the comic book. Or like Mario. You want to own the graded Mario Nintendo game because that's where Mario came from. Similarly, you want to own AF-15 because that's where Spider-Man came from. So to me, it's like whatever vertical the character actually was created in is like, that's the coolest collectible to own, in my opinion. But I do understand the appeal of why certain people would want, certain types of, why certain people would want certain types of collectibles or like various collectibles and stuff. Okay, we're up to 390 here. So we're getting some bids in. We'll see if this, I'm curious if this 4.5 is going to beat this 3.0. What do you guys think about this? What do you think? Would you rather have this 3.0 looking like this versus this 4.5 that looks like this? Definitely some soot on the cover of this one. Back looks okay. I mean, yeah, back looks okay. It's interesting. Superman 1, people love this book. People love this book for sure. All right, where are we at here? Okay, 410. So we're finally got to bid it up. We're bidding up. We're about to hit that 3.0 price point. We're getting there. See, this is what's interesting about the Comic Connect auction is that, yeah, you reset the clock back to 3 minutes. What do you guys think about that style? Like, there's no sniping. You can't snipe the bid at the last second with Comic Connect, which I guess that makes it maybe it's a less stressful way to bid on stuff. You can kind of take your time and you can feel confident with your bid at the end. You're like, I feel confident. This is it. This is my bid. I'm not going to do it. So you just kind of hang in there. Let's see here. 3.0 for sure. The 3.0, as you said, buy the book, not the grade. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, buy the book, not the grade. It seems like people are definitely buying the book here. Or I should say not buying the book with this 4.5 right here. Because if it goes for 410 here, it's not only will it be less than what the 3.0 sold for, it's going to be half as much of what the 4.0 sold for earlier in the year. But again, this is why these markets are not perfect, right? There's so many variables. There's so many factors that come into play. Here. Yeah, it is a great cover. It is a great cover. It is a very cool book. Like, maybe this is not a factor. Like, I've started to appreciate this more. Just from a bird's eye view. Like, it is cool to me that it says Superman on it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Action Comics 1. That's awesome. But it says Superman 1. Like, that is so satisfying to have that. A lot of, like, for me, it's just, there's a lot of, or like I think about Batman, right? Like Detective Comics, like badass to have Detective Comics 27, but also really cool to have like Batman 1, Batman 2, Batman 3, just saying Batman on it. I think that there's something that is very satisfying about that. And that's kind of what makes this book so iconic as well to me. This could be a big price correction. Yeah, it really could, Comic Collector Geek. I mean, I do think that this is going to get beat up because of the dirt on the cover, but let's see. 15 seconds left, guys. 15 seconds left. 10 seconds left. Will anyone come in? 5. Oh, we got the bid. Back to 3 minutes. Back to 3 minutes. We're going to reset. I don't know if you guys are getting the delay on my my stream here, if you can see the countdown clock. But we're back at 4:20 now. So we're matching the 3-0. It's getting hot here. It's getting hot in here. The 3-0. Let's see. Yeah, just iconic. Just clean aesthetics. Just looks great. Just looks great. All right, let me see. Scrolling back up through the chat, I think there are some other kind of questions I missed here that I wanted to talk about. 100% Spider-Man will be around forever. I agree with that. With DC comic speculation overgun combined with build up Secret Wars, if I had money, I'd be buying so much stuff right now. Hold for 3 years. Yeah. I think if you buy now with the intent to hold for 3 years, and you buy and you get good deals now, and your plan is to sell in 3 years, I think you're going to do well. I really do. As younger collectors get older, some of them make some more doll hairs and then look for more pricey rare books. Yeah, I do think that is the case. I mean, it is interesting with my even my own analytics. Like when we talk about, in the weeds of YouTube, guys, when I look at, okay, YouTube does a good job like sharing who watches my videos and like kind of gives me a full breakdown. And for sure, like I have a quarter of my audience that is in their 20s, then I have like the other quarter, third or 30% or whatever that's in their 30s, and then the other 30s is in their 40s and whatever. But it is definitely true that the breakdown is older than 30 for the most part. But so on the negative side of it, it could be like, oh, only old people like comic books. Young people don't like comic books. But on the other side of it, it could be that it's like, well, I know when I was in my 20s, I didn't really have money, or I didn't care about like investing or like spending money on collectibles and things like that. So it could just be an interest thing. And as younger people get older and they get their own money and they get interested in having those types of whatever assets, stocks, collectibles, things like that, then they age into that interest. Crypto is kind of an interesting thing because crypto definitely just skewed younger. Like younger people they just like it. I think from a digital sense, because they're obviously more into that type of thing. But yeah, I would guess that the stock channels are skew older as well. All right, 4:30, 10 seconds. Is anyone coming in? Bid number 48. Oh, bid 49, 440. Okay, guys. This is a slugfest. I feel like this is two people going back and forth, going down to the wire, thinking about it. This could be a long one for sure. So this is definitely like this is the flaw of this system, where like, it's like, what would be like my analogy? Comic Connect is like the last 30 seconds of a basketball game where both teams have full timeouts. Like the last 30 seconds takes 15 minutes. It's like the length of the last 30 seconds is the length of the entire fourth quarter in a basketball game where you have timeouts, because these clocks just keep resetting. They just keep resetting. If this was like a heritage auction, you would have such like people would be bidding off each other, but eventually it'd be like, all right, cool. Like I'm out 44 or 440. I'm done. Comic dealer told me that 0% of his buyers are below 21. I mean, this is completely anecdotal. And I would tell you this. But when I went to LA Comic Con, there were so many young people buying comic books. It was shocking. It could have been random, could have been by chance. Most other shows I've gone to, it's definitely skewed older, especially in the vintage section. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely younger people buying comic books now. it's not a tremendous amount. It's not a tremendous amount. Like I can't imagine that it's the majority of people who are younger on the young side, but I do think that there's interest, and I do think that young people can see comics in a sort of like ironic way. Young people definitely like vintagey things. It's cool. Like if you guys ever go into like a lot of you know, what's really popular with kids too, especially on TikTok, is like the pop-up events and things like that. So people like experiential stuff, physical experiential stuff, and comic books can be that. Excuse me. All right, where are we at? 2 minutes. We're up to 450. So we're trickling. Let's see where this ends. Zach, what's going on, man? It's funny to see the same games played north of 400K that get played and whatnot for 50. Dude, it's right. It's like exactly the same. It's exactly the same thing. Oh, we have to also add, forgot to mention, the 15% buyer's premium will be added to this. So the buyer's premium is going to definitely play a role in the price, in the final price here. Now, this book is going to have to get to 815 to kind of rival, I think, where it's at right now at 450. You know, it's above the 3.0 price, but with the 15% buyer's premium, you know, it's at 517. So that's an okay price right now. A big pullback from what the 4.0 sold for, but we can understand why that's the case. I mean, when we're looking at this visually, we can see the aesthetics probably not what the buyers want. What up, Darth Bishop? What's going on, man? All right, let me scroll back up. How are we doing here? 50 seconds left. 50 seconds left. Let's see if there are other questions that came in. Up the down 7 was saying, one thing that's really good about the current market flood is that it's a good test for whether or not a book is really rare. If you still only see 1 to 2 copies on eBay in this market, it's rare. Yeah, that is a good like gut check. I totally agree with that. And it is interesting to see certain books out there that on eBay, like before last year, it was so hard to find these books. Like you didn't have many. And now when you go on eBay, it's like, wow, like here they are. I was looking for these. All right, wait, hold on. Let me stop my thought for a second. 5 seconds, guys. 4, 3, going for once. 450 sold. $450,000 with the 15% buyer's premium, which I guess doesn't get added until later. So yeah, some things about Comic Connect that is not great here. So that would make it $517,000 for the CGC 4.5 Superman #1. What do you guys think about that final price? I would say that it's not a great showing. I mean, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money. The 3.0 sold for 420. That one's going to sell for 5 something. So it's holding its ground. This 4.0 did a lot better, selling for 800K earlier in the year, but we understand the aesthetics of what happened with this particular 4.5. So it's interesting, but again, I would make the argument that even with books like this, like if this 4.5 went on sale earlier this year in 2022, guaranteed it's getting higher than 450 final sale. Guaranteed, right? Like even at this price point, people being more open with their money, their spending, whatever, it all plays a factor. So even it being a golden age book, which for the most part, golden age books are always going to do really well. Of course, people are going to be tighter in the pocketbooks, even in times now, even at that level, just, it only makes sense. It only makes sense. So a good sale, but could have been better. Derek, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Will it double in price in 10 years? Will it double in price in 10 years? It's a good question. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you guys think comics will always go up in value? Do you think there will be a day when nobody cares about this stuff anymore? Will Superman 1 always be desired, even 50 years from now? I think in 10 years, for sure, comics will still be around. For sure. What is 10 years from now? 2033? Yeah, for sure. 20 years? 20 years is where I go, I don't know. I think Superman 1 is always going to be in demand. It is iconic, right? It is a very important piece of American history, the comic book itself. So this will always be important to American culture. But like, I mean, is anyone going to want like first appearance of Bagman in 30 years? I don't know. I don't know if anyone's going to want first appearance of Bagman in 30 years. That's the truth. I mean, someone's going to want it, but like, someone's going to want it. What do you guys think? Yeah, both the 3 on the 4 look much nicer than the 4-5 for sure. I mean, there's definitely an aesthetic on this book that pulled down the value, I would say. And that's one of those things too, where I was talking with Rob earlier, where it's like, I mean, there are certain aesthetics that can ruin a value. And all of a sudden, if you go on GPA and you see like, oh, well, like the last price didn't sell anywhere near the 4.0, it's like, you would think, oh yeah, the prices are going down. But like, there's a lot of factors, right? There's a lot of variables that go into all of this stuff. And it's a very clear variable in this situation because we're talking about like, there's only 100 Superman 1, so you can very much compare. Okay, here's what the 3.0 looks like. Here's what the 4.0 looks like. Here's what the 4.5 looks like. Versus, say, X-Men 266, where there could be a ton of different variables of the 100 books that went on sale. One could just have a slightly more saturated cover than the other one. So it's interesting. All right, Mickey, I'm home, so I guess I should go inside and see the family. Always fun hanging out. Yeah, Planet Arizona. Glad you had a safe drive. Thanks for hanging out, man. Blue chip comics evolve from growth to value, will always have a high price tag. I mean, that has been the case. It's been the case for sure. It's definitely been the case. The question is, will it always be the case? During the boom, even ratty copies of books were selling instantly for record prices. Now people are being picky and looking at, PQ, centering, chipping, rusty staples, eye peel, etc. Yeah, you're totally right, Ivanovich. Totally right. You could sell anything, right? In the boom, like any book that was desired, someone was going to buy it. Didn't matter how much aesthetically displeasing it was. But now you're right, and this is what Upside Down was talking about with like the inventory. When you have options and you have the ability to choose and you go on to eBay and you see at least 30 different books that you could buy, then the aesthetics all of a sudden matter. The grade and not just grade. Like we're talking about grade plus the intangibles. What does the wrap look like? What is the, what was this the first book off of the press or the printer with a brand new ink on it? Or was this the last book, before they had to replace the ink cartridge on the printer? You can really do that. Like, what is the cut like? Like, is the uncanny X-Men chopped off a little bit? I don't like that. Is the spine, like you guys know in the ASM 361, that book is notorious for having like weird like cuts and strange wraps and stuff. And so I think that those things, like, they don't bother me so much, but they definitely bother some people, and that's going to have its effect for sure. And there's a lot of those books. Like I was talking to Ryan and Drew even earlier today about how eBay has such great opportunities for books right now at live auctions, for books that are like ones that you are not necessarily thinking about or not necessarily. They're still key books. They're still great books, but the market clearly is not thinking about them. So one that comes to mind right now, like Journey into Mystery 103. One of my favorite books, Journey into Mystery 103. You guys know this book. First appearance of Enchantress and Executioner. What an amazing cover, in my opinion. I love this cover. The colors, the rainbow bridge. I think Enchantress is a great character. So much you could do with her in the MCU. It definitely makes me sad that we got Sylvie. They should have just made her Enchantress. I don't know why they didn't. It seems like a layup. But the point I'm making with a book like this is let's talk about a book like this. Like, nobody's thinking about this. Nobody's really specking on this one, whatever it is. And you go into eBay and, in 2021, this was a book that was like, there were only, 10 copies on eBay and they were all overpriced. And now you go into eBay and you can find like 30, 40 copies of this thing. Like, the inventory is way up on this. And these are the types of books, like this tier of book right now, where I feel like if you just lazily follow auctions for these types of books, you will find amazing deals on eBay if you're willing to be patient with those auctions. There was one that finished today for like $100. It was a raw copy, 3.0, but it's like $100. Great price for that. I mean, not to say that book's ever going to go to the moon, but it's like, yeah, the downside risk of that book, buying it at that price point, is it's like, yeah, you're not really going to do much worse, with this. So it's like, these are great times to find these types of things right now. So it's these types of books. So like, what would it be another example of a book like that? Like X-Men 60, you know what I mean? Like first appearance of Sauron, like books like that, right? That like the market isn't laser focused on Sauron. So if you just follow every single live auction of X-Men 60 right now, you're going to be able to find that book for a steal. Like, you're going to get it for $40 or like $50 or whatever, which is nothing. You will find it for a really good price. So those are the types of books I have on my list right now that I'm just trying to, the ones I remember, I'm like, yeah, I should find a nice version of that book, or like Tales of Suspense 50, like First Mandarin, just the random live auction of that book that happens. Like, nobody cares about that. Nobody cares about Mandarin anymore, but that's a good way to find steals right now. Shh, on the eBay right now. Yeah. Sorry, Mike. Don't go to eBay. There's nothing, facts. There's no deals on eBay right now. Everyone get off of eBay. Don't watch those live auctions, especially the ones that finish at 6 a.m. on a weekday. Don't watch those ones. Don't watch those ones. I have FF48 and Hulk 181 up for sale and no action a month. And no action in this month. Last year, they'd have been scooped up in less than a week. Yeah, Roberto. Yeah, it's the same type of thing. I mean, again, it's like I think a lot of people are just unsure, and for good reason. We're all unsure. How much more are they going to go down? Is now the time to buy? Is now the time not to buy? I don't know. I don't have the answers. I just see if it's a good deal and it makes sense, and I'm in a position that I want it, I'll get it. But like you're saying, you could not keep those books on the shelves, for a time, and now they're everywhere. They're ripe for the taking. I hate to say it, but we are on the downward curve in comic book adoption, which means fewer buyers, which means in 20 to 30 years, those 40-year-olds will probably not value comics like our generation. Yeah, it's hard to say. It's definitely hard to say. I mean, it does feel like certain books will have that historical importance for sure. But in some of the other conversation we were having, where it's like, so let's talk about Golden Age, right? Superman 1, Batman 1, Action 1, Chamber 19, those types of books, right? There's always going to be people who want them, Suspense 3. There's always going to be people who want these books. And you don't need that many people. Like, everyone in this chat right now, we got, we've basically had 100 people in this chat all night. So it's like, let's say that, hey, I don't know how old everyone is, but let's say in 20 or 30 years time, we're all still alive and doing well and happy and healthy, and we all still want comic books. Like, we can all just flip to each other, like we can all just sell to each other 30 years from now. And as long as the book has 100 on the census, like, those values will still be up there. But like, when we get to, those types of books where we're talking about, Bagman and things like that, it's like, yeah, in 30 to 40 years time, like, Bagman has no like American cultural significance. It's not like Superman 1. So it's going to be hard for, for those books to have any desire in the market if people don't continue to be like collectors and stuff. Now, there's also just the natural rate of inflation. Maybe we won't have dollar bin books anymore. Maybe we're going to have $5 bin books just because that's what the currency is. So, maybe they'll be $5 in the future. So it's hard to say, but I think 10 years, we're good. I think 20 years might still be good. And the other thing is too, what we don't know. Here's what we really don't know. And this is, I'm curious about this. What is going to be the fallout years from now? The true like fallout of the MCU, right? Let's say you are a kid who right now, I guess you would be 18, 19, 20. 18, 19, 20. You grew up with the MCU, right? From 2008, you went all the way through it. It was very influential in your life in middle school, throughout high school. And you're now like 19, maybe you're over phase 4, right? Like maybe you're just like, as you do when you get older, you kind of get into different things. You get into, you get into different interests and stuff. You chase girls, you chase guys, whatever it is. And you don't care. And then 10 years go by and you hit 30 and you're out there in the workforce and you're making some money and the MCU is still going on. By that time, we're, we're doing the X-Men saga. We're in phase 9 and we're doing X-Men. And you kind of get excited again. You get a little bit nostalgic and you think about how you grew up with the MCU and Robert Downey Jr. playing Iron Man and all that stuff. And you just think to yourself like, oh, like comic books and whatever. I got some money, and you think about collectibles and you just get that nostalgia. And then you decide to go YOLO on a Tales of Suspense 39. Like, that's what I'm curious about. And again, not every person who grew up on MCU is going to convert their fandom into purchasing comic books. But I am curious if there is that wave. Like, in a lot of ways, the 2021 boom wave, in a lot of ways, it's like, they're like the people like me who like grew up in the 90s, right? Like we came of that age in the 90s and in that sort of boom period, and we bought Death of Superman and we bought all the Image comics. And now we're of the age. And ironically, that 90s comic book boom that crashed the market, like here we are years later. And I feel like we are all the product of that boom, right? So similarly, is there going to be like an MCU kind of delayed product later on in generations? That might just be pure copium, total copium, but it's something that I think about. It could be interesting. So there might be that boom cycle. All right, let me catch up here. Yes, like out in their 20s and then mid 30s and then 40s, they buy. Yeah, I mean, that happens. That happens for sure. I think they reboot the MCU with the future 2099 or 39, depending on how close it is. And then after that, they reboot it back to normal, rinse and repeat. They could definitely do that. I definitely think like somewhere on the wall in Disney or in Marvel Studios or whatever, they probably have some like company tenants or core values or whatever. And I'm willing to bet that somewhere in there, the word generational exists, because that has to be their vision. There has to be their vision of like, how do we make this a generational like passion and a generational entertainment property? It's the same thing with, even when you think about sports, NBA, NHL, MLB. I've done work for video game companies like Riot and stuff. And we talk about that a lot. Like, it's like recruiting the next generation so that as they grow older, they're still into it. And then when they have kids, they want to bring their kids into it. And the cycle repeats. It's the same thing with the MCU. They're thinking, how do we do this for 40 years so that the kids who are watching it now, they come of age, they have kids, they want to take their kids to the MCU movies that are going, and it just goes and goes and goes. So for sure, it's definitely that case. And so I'm curious, in our lifetimes, this will happen. We will find out what happens in our lifetimes 20 years from now or whatever, in comic books, of like, is that MCU generation that was influenced by movies, do they go into comic books in some kind of crazy way? We will find out. This is all demand supply game. As long as there is just a small percentage of new entrants coming into the hobby, the prices will rise. Supply is mostly fixed in GA and Silver Age. In fact, for some GA, prices can explode. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's all supply demand, right? And Golden Age has very low supply, so it doesn't take much demand to make that supply or to make that inventory blow up. Silver Age has more supply, so it does require more demand, and there can be more demand because pop culture has that influence on demand for those superheroes. But you're right. I mean, as Elvine Christian, one of the dealers I always interview, I talk about, he always says, if 1% of 1% wants the original, then there's not enough. That's what he always says. And it's true. It's like not every person who watched the MCU is going to be converted into a comic book collector. But if 1%, 5% are, that can be a lot of people. Can be a lot of people for sure. Let's see here. I mainly, what's going on, Eric? I mainly collect sports cards, so off-centered or poorly cut covers bother the hell out of me 99% of the time I look at comics. All I see is the front cover, so I make sure it's a nice one. Yeah, it's a good point. It's an interesting perspective from the card world. And the card world is, this goes into play with the grading aspect of cards. I mean, you definitely are going to know this. But like, I actually thought when I got back into comic books and was teaching myself grading, I thought that the cut mattered. Like, I thought centering was going to matter because I remember knowing about that about cards. And so I was actually surprised that centering on comic books didn't matter at all. But those aesthetics, they may not matter from an actual grade perspective, but they certainly matter from, a buyer who cares. So it's really interesting about that. I'm 30. I intentionally buy silver bronze keys to stash away for 40 years until I'm 70. Just taking them out to change bags and boards. James, I mean, this is the way. This is the way. It's the best thing to do. Just stash them away. Kids have been collecting comics since they came out. Maybe the hobby in its present incarnation hasn't been around as long, but make no mistake, this hobby is growing. Don't lose hope. Yeah, I'm not losing hope. I mean, and the other things too, it's like, I'm enjoying it. I enjoy it so much. I enjoy it so much. I think it's such a fun thing to do. It's such a fun hobby. And I think kids like it too. I think they like the idea of it. I think this is actually a whole like modern comic industry conversation. There's just a lot of problems with it. It's just too expensive. I think it's just too expensive for kids. You go in and you have to buy like a comic that's like $5. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's insane. Like back in the day, we used to be able to go in $1, $2, you could buy 10 issues for $20. 10 issues for $20. Now you buy 4 issues for $20. So it's just too expensive. And I think that that's really the big problem. I don't know how they fix that for kids. And there's too many options for the kids. Now it's like they'd rather just read the trade or the manga or the whatever. I don't know. There's a bunch of problems. I genuinely think like the expense of comics is generally the biggest problem. Swag, everyone in this chat will be fighting in World War III, still debating Wolverine's first appearance law. Heroes will never die. Yeah, that's true. As long as comics exist, there will always be those who want 180 to be the value book. There will always be those. For sure, generational. Look at what Disney has done with Star Wars. Yeah, Disney trying to make Star Wars generational. Bob here. What's going on, man? In my lifetime of collecting comic books, I have never seen comics fluctuate like recently, where they are going down somewhat. They still see much better than investing in stocks. Well, yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, you can do well with comics. it's not necessarily reliable. I mean, you gotta really be in it like you would with anything. And some of the, as when I do my index videos and talk about like how comics return 15% or whatever, or somewhere in that range, 10 to 15, I get a lot of people that it's like, there's no way you can do that. And it's like, well, I'm making these calculations in a vacuum, right? Like, it's like, I'm taking the 100 most in demand comics and we're applying fair market GPA values to them, which, as you guys know, like, yes, these books sell on GPA or whatever, but like, you can't go to eBay and buy the GPA last sold price. Usually it doesn't work that way, right? And so it's hard to like find these deals in a vacuum. So, but you can do them if you are diligent and you work hard and you watch every single auction, as we did with Comic Connect. You can make it work for sure. The MCU, I feel, will suffer from the Police Academy syndrome. They made 7 films, and people just got burnt out. It's going to take longer, but MCU will eventually go direct to Blu-ray. I mean, I guess it's possible they could just crash and burn. I mean, for sure, I think Phase 4 was not very well loved. But I think that the tier of filmmaking we're talking about here for MCU is a lot higher than Police Academy 6 and 7. You know what I mean? Like, nothing is too big to fail, but if it's good, it's good. People talk about superhero fatigue and all that sort of stuff. I don't think that there's such a thing as superhero fatigue. I think if it's good, it's good. And that's really the bottom line. And a lot of the Phase 4 has just not been good, and they need to make it better. But we've had these like superhero myths and hero storytelling in our culture since we were drawing pictures on caves, like these types of stories, these modern myths of the superhero things are like, deeply ingrained in our DNA. There's something very satisfying to these stories. So I don't think that there will ever be fatigue in that sense, as long as they are done well. Get those Image books now. Spawn 1, Youngblood 2, Wildcat, Savage Dragon, Max, Pitt, Tomorrow's Producers grew up on that stuff. I mean, it's an interesting play. It is an interesting play. Again, it comes down to census, right? It comes down to that supply demand, like how many people are going to want to buy the book, how many people are going to want to hold it for it to really go to the moon. That said, I mean, those books are so cheap right now. So like, yeah, I mean, you can definitely make a play on it. Like low risk overall. You can definitely do well. Spawn 1, there's a lot of books out there on Spawn 1. Spawn 1's tough. But those other ones, like, yeah, like Pitt 9.8 or Max 9.8, those books, I think that those can do pretty well. But we'll see. I mean, it's going to take a lot for the Spawn universe. Like if Todd McFarlane does a Image cinematic universe, that'll be interesting to see. $5 to $10 a week was all you needed back in the day. Yeah, $5 to $10. It's like totally, yeah, $20. You were like invincible with $20 going into a comic book store back in the day. Now you can't. Like it's tough. It's tough for the kids. It's too expensive. Cameron, what's going on, man? What's going to be? We getting Henry Cavill's Darkhawk? Oh man, don't give me hope. Just I feel like Hawkeye with that. Don't say that to me, because I always joke about. I feel like when this happens, and of course it'll happen, I feel like you guys know, like when one day we're going to wake up, you guys are going to be whatever on your Reddit or wherever you get your movie news, and there's going to be some headline that's like such and such blah 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 to be Darkhawk in the MCU. And I'll tell you what, that day it's going to be a good day. And whatever video I make that day, I'm going to be saying I told you so. I'm going to be saying I told you so. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. It'll be a good one. We'll have lots of jokes in it. I was a teacher for 30 years and gave my kids Archie comics frequently. They would read the shit out of them all year. If kids get comics, kids read comics. So the hobby will go on. Yeah, I think totally. Like if they like it, it's fun. They do think it's fun. Like I have nephews. They're like, 8 years old, and they think it's fun. They like holding it, they like reading it and all that stuff. I just think it's too expensive for them. They can't really buy a bunch of books. Comic Forge, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. If you guys don't know Pressable Defects Comic Forge, you guys gotta go over there and sub them up. You guys know these guys. They always do great shows. Thanks for stopping in. Longtime sports car dealer, brand new to comics, currently only buying CGC and trying to get everything under FMV. I only watch auction. First time using Comic Connect tonight. Did you find deals here? I had the intent to like maybe bid on some stuff, but like, doing the stream, I can't multitask at all. There were some stuff that I thought was interesting. Still some books out there. Actually, I want to see, damn, is there a way? Okay. We got to watch Wizard 1. We were talking about that earlier. So let me save Wizard 1. And actually, I wanted to see what that Tales of Suspense 39 sold for. Did any of you guys catch that one? Can I pull my up watch list? Did I have that? Nope. Ending soonest. Yeah, the search items on this are not very good. Okay, so here we go. Oh, okay. So I was following some of these ones. This Tales from the Crypt book. I maybe would have bid on this right here. You guys know this one, Tales from the Crypt 28. This is kind of the Feldstein cover, the Buried Alive one. $451 for a 5.0, I think is a pretty good deal on this. I really want to get one of these Feldstein Tales books for myself. This is probably my least favorite of the Feldstein ones, but I have my eye on this one. And then this TOS 39. I was looking at this one. It was already sitting at 4,300 before I even turned the stream on. And that was actually more than I would have been willing to bid on this. But this is definitely a book I would love to add to the collection at some point. So I had my eye on this one. I wasn't going to bid on it because it was already like where it was sitting. I was like, I'm not going to pay that. I'm willing to wait. But this was a really nice looking 1.5. Really nice looking one. I think this is the problem with this book is that it's got a full spine split, which, I don't know how you guys feel, but as far as like aesthetics that bring like a book down to like a low grade, like a 1.5, like spine split is totally fine by me. I mean, once it's in the case, like who cares, if it's a raw book, a spine split is the worst. I hate when my book, the cover is detached or like the spine is completely split. In the raw form, I hate that. But in the slab, I mean, these are the best types of low grades you can get because usually the cover doesn't look like 1.5. So this was the book that I kind of had my eye on, but I knew I wasn't going to bid on it because I think that it's still above the trend line. And so my thought was that it might get cheaper. I'll wait a little bit more on that one. Any chance of an opinion on my last 5 questions that have been ignored? Lol. Sorry, Dwayne. I mean, the chat's going by. I don't see all of them. I don't know if you've ever been StreamYard, but sometimes it just goes like that. And so I'm missing people's questions, but if you write it again, I'll try to keep my eye on it for it. Do you think this retail versus direct price disparity will continue? What do you mean by the retail versus direct price? Are we talking about like newsstand editions? Is that what we're talking about? Sorry, Mike. Can you clarify? Derek says, think of it this way. Disney spent $4 billion acquiring Marvel IP just to stop at Endgame. They're going to keep rebooting news stories, new actors, new producers. 1,000%, right? 1,000%. And even beyond that, like, think about this. Like, when you guys go to Disneyland, like, they made Avengers Land. You know what I mean? Like, they built out Avengers Land. Same with Star Wars. They turned Tomorrowland into Star Wars Land. Like, the parks are that's where you get the kids, right? That's where you get the kids. Like, you get the kids, they go to the park. We need to sell them some Iron Man gauntlets. You need to sell them a Thor hammer and a Captain America shield. Like they got to keep this money machine going. So it's like, I got to sell these kids a lightsaber. So it's the same idea where it's like it's not easy to turn over your park. They're investing into this. This is an IP that they're going to force people to consume. When do you think we're going to start seeing these prices stop falling and begin to level out? Well, no one can predict the bottom, right? Nobody can. But I would say that it's so there. I'm of multiple different minds, and there's a lot smarter people than me on YouTube that can explain this stuff. But, we're really diving into like wider economic factors. But once you get into like a place where the Fed pivots, as they're raising interest rates now, they've been raising interest rates, but the percentage in which they are raising interest rates, they just lowered for the first time this last month. So once you get to a point where the Fed pivots, where they're going to start printing money again, right now they're doing the quantitative tightening. When they do the quantitative easing, and there will be a time where that happens, for sure that's going to be the turning point for the stock market and likely crypto. Now, I don't necessarily know if that plays a role in comic books, if there's any correlation to that. It's really hard to say, but that turn will likely happen sometime in Q3 or Q4 of 2023, right? So like that would be a theoretical stock market bottom. That's what a lot of people predict. Now, there's other more positive predictions. One is if we go to like crypto sort of channels and they talk about this, and I watch a lot of this stuff. A lot of for them is like, they talk about this thing called the Bitcoin halving, which is like a market cycle that relates to the price of Bitcoin and just how it behaves. And again, I'm just going to butcher these explanations, but the Bitcoin halving, I think, if I remember it correctly, comes in like March of next year. And typically what that means is that tends to be the bottom of the correction for Bitcoin. And then that starts to enter like the price getting back into a bull market. So if the Bitcoin halving comes in March, what we did on our last index was there was some correlation between crypto price of Bitcoin and the comic book index. And so that could be the bottom for comic books if there's that correlation. So March of next year. So those would be my two predictions: March of next year or Q3 of 2023. But like I always say, it's like, comics are not like a perfect market, right? So it's like, it could be the bottom. Say it's the bottom in March of next year, and I want to buy Tales of Suspense 39. It's like, cool, this is the bottom of the comic book market, and I want to buy this book. But just because it's the bottom doesn't mean that that book is going to be available to me to buy it at that specific week or month or whatever the week of the bottom is. So let's say in January, this book comes at auction, and even though it's not the market bottom, like, this is my window to buy the book, like, and that's the deal to jump on. So that's kind of what I always talk about with the markets, where it's like, it's hard to know like where the comic book market bottom is. And even if you did know where it is, that doesn't mean that the deal that is in front of you is going to be reflective of the bottom. So like, if the deal comes across your way, just take the deal now, because a good deal is a good deal, no matter what the bottom is, because comics are not a perfect market. And it's not like stocks, right? Where it's like, we log into our Fidelity account and then you like buy Apple. It's like, it doesn't work that way, right? For comic books. So it's a little bit different, but I would say it's either going to be March or it's either going to be Q3 of 2023. And those will be the, if comic books are correlated to that, then those will be the comic market bottoms. This is not financial advice. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, by the way. Darkhawk in Guardians 3 post-credit, please. Oh, Miguel, please don't say that to me. Don't say that to me. Don't give me hope. Don't make me think that that's a possibility. Oh my God. That'd be amazing. Henry Cavill would be a great James Bond. Yeah, he would be a badass James Bond. He was awesome in Mission Impossible. I'd be down to see that for sure. Yeah, but teacher and the kid love comics for free. Yeah, because they're expensive. Totally. If you think $5 comics are too expensive for kids, wait till you see the cost of console PC games. Yeah, that's true. But in fairness, Derek, when you buy like a video game, it feels like it should be that price. Like, you know, like a comic book, like they feel cheap. You know, it's like cheap entertainment. It's the same, like, you know, disposable entertainment type of thing. So it feels worse buying that versus a video game. But you're right. Video games are way more expensive. If it's slab spine splits don't matter. Totally agree. Totally agree. All right, let me catch up here in the chat. Let me reverse engineer this here. I don't think that crypto will correlate much with the comic book market. Any similarities are coincidences. The commentary, what's going on? Yeah, I mean, I think correlation does not equal causation, right? Doesn't at all. Doesn't at all. But it was just an interesting thing to discuss. And yeah, like, again, it's such a small sample size, and I'm just trying to make correlations that are interesting for us to think about. I do think that there probably was crypto. Like when we talk about those AF-15s, I don't know if you caught us earlier, we were talking about AF-15. I do think that it is very likely that there were people who became like crypto millionaires, you know, and they were just like, oh, let me just YOLO into AF-15, like, because that's just the most obvious book to YOLO into, right? Like if you're somebody who got a massive pump on crypto, and then you're like, yeah, I like Spider-Man, I would buy this book. Like, so, and it doesn't take much for these markets to move, right? 10 sales has a huge impact on like values of an AF-15, you know? So I think that is, I think there is some correlation there that actually can move the market in some way. But you're right. Like, you know, it's not, can't be one-to-one. I think feeling we're going to be flat for the most part of 2023. Yeah, I think so too. I think actually, you know, and by flat, it can be just like this, right? Like just look like an EKG machine, just up and down, up and down. There's going to be a month where it's like, yeah, it sells for this. And then there's going to be a month where it sells for that. And then it's going to go back up and then back down, back up and back down. And that's kind of what comic books were like for a long time. So, and then eventually you hit a point where the floor keeps raising. So we can trade sideways for quite some time. And that's another part about it too, where it's like, I think I mentioned this in a video where I was just talking about the urgency, where it's like everyone kind of knows. We all kind of have that feeling of like, yeah, I feel like buying Hulk 181. I said it earlier in the stream. I feel like buying Hulk 181, but like, do I have to buy it now? I can buy it next month. I can buy it 2 months from now. I can buy it 3 months from now. I can buy it 4 months from now. I can buy it 8 months from now. I think that the prices are going to trade sideways. So like, what's the rush? What's the rush for me to pull the trigger on it? There's no real rush. And so I think that's what's kind of interesting about kind of where we are in that. I hope the lull in comics lasts until March. I think it'll definitely last until March for sure. I do think that there will be other factors when we get to March that can start to turn that tide. You know, I mean, we're kind of in a new space, right? But like in my very limited, small sample size of doing comic book YouTube content, I've now done it in March of 2021 and March of 2022. And there's nothing to say that March of 2023 is going to be any different. But what does feel anecdotally true is that March just tends to be a time when comic collectors start to get a little bit excited again. You know what I mean? And what I think happens is there's down months in January and February. And then because people are coming off the holidays, you know, you got to get into the year or whatever. You got other things on your mind. And then March rolls around or end of February rolls around and you get the Super Bowl. And then you get these lit Super Bowl MCU commercials. You know, we're going to get like Ant-Man. We're going to get Guardians of the Galaxy Super Bowl commercial. We're going to get Secret Invasion Super Bowl commercial. And people are just going to start to get that like, oh, let me get excited about this stuff again. You know, people are going to start to get excited again. And March usually is when the tides begin to turn again, because next year, for instance, we're going to get Ant-Man, then we're going to get Secret Invasion. Like, what if Secret Invasion is dope? Like, what if that show is awesome? I mean, that first trailer looked awesome. So it's definitely going to last till March, but there can be things in pop culture that affect the market in that way. So it'll be interesting to see. I just bought my son's lightsabers at Disney World this month. Now they want to consume all the Star Wars material. See, that's how they get you. That's how they get you. You go to the park, you get the shiny, glowy lightsaber. It's so cool. It's so satisfying to hold that thing. And then you're a Star Wars fan for life. You know what I mean? You're a Star Wars fan for life. Mike, oh yeah, newsstand versus direct. So do I think that the newsstand versus direct is always going to be a thing? Like if there's a reason, here's what I've come to accept in comic books at this point. If there is a reason to make your book more rare, people are going to value it. So even though to me, I think newsstands are stupid is a harsh word, but it's like, I don't care about newsstand. Like, I don't really care. That's fine. I don't care. But if it's more rare and people can sort of prove that it's more rare, and it's hard, we can't technically prove it, but like when you kind of look through sold items and inventory and you just get a sense of it, just what appears to be empirically true is that, yeah, newsstands are more rare, even in situations like pre-1986, is that you can still sort of see newsstands being more rare anecdotally. Like when you look at She-Hulk books, for instance. Now, the market doesn't put a massive premium on them, but there are those collectors, those people that will put a premium on them and will seek them out. And for that reason, the newsstand is always going to have that premium on it. So I don't know if that was actually your original question, but I do think that, yes, like newsstands will always outsell, at least in that time frame window, which we're talking about, 80s to when the newsstand stopped, like late 90s sort of thing. I'm just scrolling through here. Just looking through. All right, Jake said, truthfully buy up the good video games if you're an investor, as this generation, along with 80s, 90s kids, want to collect. I mean, it's possible. It's risky, though. I mean, we don't know. Like, video game market is very what would you call it? Like an immature market. Like we're still learning. Graded video games are a new thing. Just starting to slab them. Just starting to figure out what the censuses are. A lot of those video games, like Mario 64 and stuff, came out of the gate swinging, got massive prices, and then crashed really hard because we're still figuring out, like, what is the census out there? Like, at least with comic books, like, sure, it's possible that there's a bunch of Superman ones, in some person's attic, like in the middle of Kansas, somewhere. That's possible. But like, in the last like 40 years of comic book collecting, I mean, people have been looking for those collections. So the question with the graded video game stuff is, like, even if they are rare, like, we haven't done the diligence of unearthing all of those collections of sealed video games that exist out there, right? We haven't checked nearly all of the attics. So it's hard to know, like, what the censuses are. But, it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible that as kids get older and they have that nostalgia for those games, it's an interesting market. Past Point Comics, what's going on? Efren, good to see you, man. Just want to say hi. If you guys don't know, too, Past Point Comics, go check out his YouTube channel. Great dude, great friend of the channel. We were at San Diego Comic-Con together. We did the panel, which was a really awesome experience. I'm so thankful that he invited me to that. This thing people are complaining about, prices, it's all relative to inflation. Back in the late 50s, early 60s, yeah, comics were 10 cents. A burger was 10-cent. Comics are $5 a burger now, is about $5. Yeah, it's true. I mean, comics are a lot more expensive now. Scrolling through. Got some great deals on Golden Age books this month. Hey, that's great, man. If you can get some good deals on Golden Age books, I think that's the Golden Age books for sure are the ones that you can get good equity on, instant equity, or you talk about the flip game. You want to talk about the ultimate irony is that, It's not about flipping modern. It's about flipping golden age. Imagine a Super Bowl commercial of MCU doing Hulk 181. Oh man, we're going to get that moment. We're going to get the moment of Wolverine diving at Hulk. It's going to look exactly like the cover. And everyone's going to go crazy. Miguel asks, did you recover all your books from that scammer? No, Miguel, still work in progress. I'll definitely have a video update when there's something substantial to update. But working with a detective now. People keep on buying that variant garbage while I pick up the golden and silver age deals out there. I mean, yeah, I mean, to each their own, you know, if you like the modern variant stuff, I mean, for sure, like, you know, knock yourself out. But I agree. I'd rather personally spend my money on gold and silver, but you know, to each of their own in that sense. If Ant-Man is good and Kang really hits, then I think we're going to see a big trend upwards, regardless of whether or not the economy is back. If peeps are going to be in on Secret Wars, then Kang is the light. Yeah, that's the thing too. I mean, again, we're all susceptible to the FOMO and being swayed and stuff. If Ant-Man is good, if it's a return to form, we're going to see some Kang books sell. People are going to want them. So it'll be interesting to see. And yeah, we're going to get to March. We're going to get that Super Bowl trailer. We're going to go into Ant-Man and that can have a little bit of an effect on the market, even outside of economic conditions. Because again, comics are not perfect, right? Like it doesn't take much to sway the market. I mean, we're talking about a few handful of sales. So it's only a handful of people that can change the 90-day moving GPA for a particular key book's value. Swag, I just won the Superman 24 PGX 3.0 in the Comic Tech auction tonight for a deal. It's going to be a CPR. Hey, nice, Chris. Congratulations, man. Anytime you can get, you know, an early Superman like that, I feel like that's a huge, huge win. Like, so cool. 1943 book. Yeah. And going for the PGX lab. I mean, I'm glad you got the deal, right? Like you never know with PGX, you never know what you're going to get with that. So hopefully it works out for you, man. Get that CPR going. Excuse me, guys. I think that there's a burnout factor that hasn't really been as evident in past dips. I think the COVID factor magnified everything, which will equal to be magnified withdrawal. Yeah, that's true. I mean, there is definitely a burnout factor for sure, right? Like, I mean, I was actually thinking of doing a video, maybe not talking about burnout, but like my pitch to people right now, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but the temptation can be to just be like, I'm burnt out. I'm done. Like I really went off the rails. I overspent and I'm done. And you just check out of the hobby. That can be the temptation. But the pitch is like, now is the time. Like, do not leave. Like, do not leave the hobby right now. You know, like you don't have to buy. You don't have to buy. You don't have to watch Swaggle YouTube videos. You don't have to do that stuff. But you should still keep tabs in, right? Because we all know what's going to happen. You're going to get to you're going to leave the hobby. You're going to get to 2026. And all of a sudden, we're going to be in the Super Bowl of 2026. And you're going to get that Super Bowl trailer for Avengers Secret Wars. And it's going to look so freaking epic. It's going to have like Robert Downey Jr. stepping out of the shadows. And it's like, oh shit, Iron Man is coming back. And then you're going to have that experience where you're going to be like, oh man, comics are cool. I remember when I was collecting comics back in 2022 and God, that was so fun. And then you're going to pull out your short box in your closet. You're going to flip through that stuff. You're like, ah, man, I love this book. And then you're going to be like, man, I wonder what the prices are. And then you're going to be like, oh man, the prices are so expensive. And then you're going to go in and you're going to FOMO buy and you're going to get caught up in the Secret Wars trailer hype. And then when all this time, you could have been buying in 2023. You know what I mean? So there's going to be that burnout. There's going to be that burnout. But the pitch is like, you don't have to buy right now, but you can't check out. You got to keep tabs in the market. You don't want to leave. You don't want to leave because this is what happens. Mistakes were made, guys. I mean, think about it. Think about how, I don't know how you guys have done. Maybe you guys have been collecting nonstop for 30 years. I'm jealous. But like, I've had the experience, right? Where I started in the 90s as a little kid. Then I checked out. Then I got back in 2005 because of Mark Millar's Civil War. I read that, got a little bit of comic books, but then I went off again. And then I got back in 2017. I'm just like, oh God, so many years. So many years I could have been stacking stuff. Could have been stacking. D-Boy, what's your thoughts on foreign books? I think they're cool. I think they're cool for sure. I definitely think that I don't know if this will ever happen, but if I was CGC or if I was like, I don't know, who are like the premier comic companies, like Torpedo Comics or something like that. God, I feel like doing international comic shows is such an untapped market. I mean, it's got to be hard. I mean, how are you going to fly your inventory to sell at a show overseas? It's going to be really difficult. But I feel like it's such an untapped market. And with the MCU and all these movies being global and comic book collecting outside of manga being a pretty like exclusive kind of Western American hobby, like feels like there's a lot of opportunity to get foreign markets into comic books. I don't know why Marvel or DC, current DC, like why are they not pushing comics in foreign markets? I mean, I'm sure they are, but like feels like a missed opportunity. So to that point, to answer your question, I think foreign comic books are really cool. And I think that there's probably a market if comic books start to catch on with foreign markets. Like, I mean, if I lived in Italy and I spoke Italian and I got into comic books, I probably would want the Italian edition. You know what I mean? So I think they're interesting. I don't know much about them, but I think they're interesting. I buy comics, by the way. Just got my Batman Spawn McFarlane cover today. Hello, Swag and Comics in chat. Hey, Derek, what's going on, man? Empire, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Thanks for coming by. If you guys don't know Empire, friend of the channel, definitely go check out his YouTube. He's always putting out great videos. So highly recommend. As a vinyl collector and a comic book collector, it would be an interesting video material if you're for your channel if we were to do an A/B comparison of both types of collectors, maybe draw in a few new subs. Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely don't know much about vinyl, but I think that there's a lot of crossover and pollination and interesting things to learn from all the collectible worlds. So yeah, absolutely. Hit me up. I will always take a newsstand over direct, although there are some directs that are rarer than newsstands. Yeah, I think, well, that's the interesting thing, Reef. Like, I think even if the directs are rarer, what is seemingly true is that like anecdotal thing where it's like, oh, but the directs still went to the comic book stores and people took care of them, whereas like the newsstands came off the rack. So it's like some random person buying their newspaper and then rolling it up in their newspaper as they also bought the comic book. So are the 9.8 newsstands hard to come by? I think that that's always it's impossible to prove it because it's just, we're not going to know the census, but that's kind of the interesting thing. I think we are deep in the burnout, but I also think people are desperate for the movies to be good again. They want the shared experience of what Infinity built up, gave us in the theaters. Yeah, totally. Totally. I mean, people want some good, feel good movies, you know? I don't know how you guys felt about Wakanda Forever. Definitely not my favorite movie, but people right now are saying, I want to watch Avatar now really bad. People are saying Avatar is really dope. And I think it's going to be a feel good movie and people are really excited. We need that. We need that back in the MCU, you know? This whole phase 4 where it's like, all we're going to do is explore grief. It's like, no more grief. All right. I'm tired of grief. Give me some Captain America wielding Mjolnir. Give me some hope and some joy. That's what I want. Too much grief. Let's scrolling through the chat here. What's going on, Matt? It's good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Scrolling through. Yeah, man, PGX makes me nervous on restorations. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit nerve wracking. I mean, shout out to Bryce Comics. I don't know if you guys know Bry, good friend of the channel as well, but he had that experience doing the PGX X-Men 1. So you never know what you're getting with them. So getting that Superman, hopefully it was like, hopefully, if you got a good deal on it and the deal is like proportional to like, what if worst case scenario, it's like 2 points less of a grade or it has restaurant on it or whatever the case is, incomplete, like you got enough of a deal to where it's still a safe purchase, hopefully. I feel like I got to add a Golden Age cap to the collection at some point for sure. Yeah, me too. I need to get a Golden Age cap, but the ones I like are really expensive. Wouldn't you know it? Go figure. I like you have shifted a tiny bit to killer Golden Age books, Zoot headlights, and attack leopards. Very cool, man. Very cool. Yeah. Everyone's saying with the Golden Age, I like the PCH stuff. I'm not into the war stuff. The jungle is okay. I could get into a little bit of jungle stuff, but I wouldn't want a lot of it. A lot of it too with the Golden Age is like just kind of nice to add like 1 or 2, and that'd be it. But yeah, famous last words, swag. I know what's gonna happen. Matt, yeah, thanks for tagging me in that thing. I think I'll talk about that. I think I'll make a video for sure. On talking about signed books. It's a good topic. I appreciate you tagging me in that. Let me see here, guys. Just scrolling through. Thanks for showcasing my comics. This was chilling. I'm a teacher starting my winter break, so it was a nice way to begin relaxing. Good night, all. All right, Jacob. Thanks so much for stopping by. Yeah, absolutely. Have a great holiday. I collected since the 90s. Only thing that slowed me down was lack of really good stories in the early 2000s. Missed out in the mid 2000s that held some decent ones that I think would have enjoyed. Yeah, there's some dark years in the comic book times. I think about like anything basically like 98 to 2005 to me is just like, what even happened in that year? You know what I mean? Like it feels like such a dark year. I literally, it's like, I remember Deadpool in 97. And then it wasn't until Mark Millar Civil War that like comics were even remotely in my purview. Swag, you're right. Robert Downey Jr. might pull a Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones come back in movie 10 years. Oh, it's 100% happening. Knocking. It's 100% happening. It's going to happen. Your story of you got in and out similar to mine. I left around 98, came back for Civil War, hung around for a little bit, and came back in 2019. Yeah, we have a similar kind of beat sheet, I guess, with it. But like, it's like the Mark Millar Civil War was an interesting one. Like that one caught my eye. I think my brother got me into it at that point. I remember him telling me to be like, "Oh, dude, Captain America and Iron Man are fighting." I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And that totally piqued my interest. I wish I had hung around because I think the Ultimates also came out around then. So I was like reading the Ultimates. I really enjoyed that. And then I churned. Scrolling through. Mr. Haas, do you think that DC Silver Age is experiencing a true uptick in the market? Well, it depends, Mark. We watched some books today go by, and there were some big sales, some weaker ones. We were talking about Showcase for the first Flash book. Definitely went under for its sale, but then there was a Green Lantern book, Showcase 22, that sold really high. I do think that there is a big interest in DC right now. DC Silver Age. It's hard to spec on DC. We have no clue what's happening, right? And we are so far away from whatever is happening actually happening. So I think that there is a push for DC books right now, but like anything, I mean, I think you have time. I think we have time. I think there is an uptick because of what's going on in the market with a lot of talk of James Gunn, but I think overall there's time, and we'll see what happens. A lot of people also say like DC has been very undervalued, and I think there probably is a lot of DC books that are undervalued, but there are also a lot of DC books that got spec'd on in the same way that Marvel books had. Like when I think of a lot of the, the more main stuff like Batgirl and Poison Ivy, and Mr. Freeze, and all the main DC books. Those got spec'd on pretty hard as well. But there's a lot of opportunity, I think, in DC. All right, I think I'm gonna start winding it down a little bit. I've been streaming almost 3 hours. Let's check in with this Wizard magazine here, though. 30 minutes still with this one. Current bid 13,500. So this. Okay, so this is not the San Diego Comic-Con version. This is truly the newsstand one. So this is interesting. Let's take a look at this, guys, because these Wizard magazines are really interesting. Are we even on the census here? Wizard magazine number 1. What is this? Wizard 1. Wizard 1. No magazine. Come on, go collect. All right, let's try something else. Let's hop over to GPA. Wizard number 1. Wizard number 1. Let's take a look at some of the values here. Okay, no values for that one. Having a hard time pulling up this book. Wizard 1. Is it this? Wizard Publishing, 1991. Okay, yes, here we go. So let's take a look at some of the values here. So 9.8. Last sale was this month for $37.50. So that is what I assume is the direct edition. Now we have the San Diego Comic-Con edition. This was $7,500 in October. San Diego Comic-Con Wizard file copy. Okay, the file copy just went. Wizard file copy, $5,500. So newsstand, there has not been a 9.8 newsstand sale. This is going to be the first newsstand edition sale, I believe, if I'm seeing this right. So let's put it into proportion here. So a 9.4 direct edition for Wizard 1 sold in October for $845. Let's rewind it back to January. So $900, $300, $750. Let's kind of average this. Let's say it's like around $600. Let's just say $700. $700 in 9.4. Newsstand edition in February went for $1,000. So 35% more value. So 9.8 went for $37.50. I mean, this is going to be a massive increase in terms of the value here for what this book goes for. 13,500 is a huge number. Now, I don't actually know if this is the only one on the census that is a newsstand edition. I couldn't find it on Go Collect specifically, but if I link out on GPA here, let's go to the census. This takes me to, you guys are going to make me, oh my God. Well, you guys can't show you guys my logins. Okay, Wizard 1 census. So we have 206 universals, 287 total. San Diego Comic-Con editions, we have 41. So what I'm trying to clarify is this newsstand edition, okay, it's not broken out. We don't know. We don't know what the difference is, but this is going to be pretty massive. I think there's probably people out there. Yeah, this is going to be huge, a huge sale. Definitely an interesting discussion. I don't know if I'm going to stream all the way to the end for this one, but even if this were to close right now, 13,000 seems like an insane number. This is, I don't know if this is the only one on the census. It's not very clear, but I'll probably do a Wizard magazine video at some point. I think this is an interesting topic that probably needs to be discussed in some way. And my general feeling on it would be that it's very unclear where this book should sit right now in terms of its values. I would use great caution with this. I would let the prices settle. I would let the submissions into CGC happen. We got to figure out how many books are out there before we FOMO into anything, because we don't know. There could be tons of Wizard magazines that have yet to be submitted. So that would be kind of the takeaway of my video. But I think with that, I am going to kind of wind it down here. Let me just last check in with the chat. I'm curious how many people would say ASM was their first comic. I'm in that club. I feel like everyone's first comic is ASM. It's got to be like 90% of people. Trade Paper Dad, 13 grand for the Wizard is insane. I used to write inside all of them and circle my book prices. It's just a guide. Next, someone will slap a yellow pages. Yeah, it is just a guide. I mean, people like this cover because it's drawn by Todd McFarlane. So, if you're a Todd McFarlane super collector, this is original art specifically for the cover. So I understand why people like it, but yeah, 13,000 to pay for this barcode right here. That's what you're paying for. Paying to see a barcode on a cover. You could spend 10 grand just to have a barcode. But in comic books, that's what we do. We want to flex our status on other people that don't have the thing that we have. Well, with that, I think I'm going to kind of wrap it up, guys. I mean, thanks so much for hanging out with me on this Friday, streaming here for basically 3 hours. Almost had 100 people in the chat almost all night. So really, really appreciate you guys hanging out. Let me see if there's anything else here. Raphael, hey, I love your channel. I recently started collecting comics and I was looking into starting a web of Spider-Man. What Spider-Man comics would you recommend? Well, Web of Spider-Man is a fun run for sure. There's definitely some good keys in there. I mean, at the end of the day, you just got to kind of buy what you like. You pick it up. You just, sounds like you're doing kind of more vintage comic stuff. So pick up a couple of issues that are cheap, see what art brings you in. And if you want to read them, give them a read, see what writers you like, and then kind of let that guide you. But Spider-Man is a great place to start. Everybody starts with Spider-Man. Do you have a window in that room? And if so, UV protection for your slabs. I do have a window in this room, but I close the window literally every single time I'm not in it. Basically, anytime I'm not recording on my camera. And I'll give my slabs breaks if I go away for a long time. But let me know if you got tips. You got good tips about preservation in that sense. Thanks, Swag. Yeah. All right. With that, guys, thanks again so much for hanging out tonight. Really appreciate it. Hope you all have a great weekend, and I will see you in the next stream.